When Malcolm Rourke told me I lacked the judgment for the job I had spent 3 years building, I thanked him. 4 days later, I switched my phone back on and found 127 missed calls from a company coming apart at the seams. My name's Elena Park. I was 36, single, and very good at making disasters disappear before anyone else noticed them. At work, that made me indispensable. In my family, it made me useful. Have you ever been asked to make yourself smaller so someone else could feel important? Tell me what city or state you are listening from. And subscribe, because the people who expected me to save them were about to learn what happened when I finally stopped. That is why this appointment gives us the strongest path forward. Malcolm finished the sentence and leaned back at the head of the conference table. The executive boardroom at Ardent Vale Medical Distribution was all glass, steel, and mountain views. It was designed to make ordinary employees feel exposed. Malcolm seemed to enjoy that. He was 58, broad through the shoulders, with a silver crew cut, and the red-cheeked glow of a man who spent more time at private clubs than distribution centers. He slid my performance review away as though it were a lunch menu he had already dismissed. My rating was the highest in the division. My results were better than anyone else's. None of it mattered. "Elena, nobody questions your work ethic," he said, smoothing the front of his navy tie. "But the senior director of network intelligence has to inspire confidence. We need presence. We need someone who can lead from the front." Then he turned toward the man across from me. "So we are moving forward with Trevor." Trevor Whitaker, my brother-in-law, smiled before Malcolm had even finished saying his name. He was 34, lean, tan, and carefully polished. Sandy hair, white teeth, a watch that cost more than my first car. He had the easy charm of a man who had never confused confidence with competence because nobody around him had ever forced him to learn the difference. For 18 months I had corrected his forecasts, rebuilt his client decks, and answered angry, late-night calls from hospital buyers after he promised delivery windows our network could not meet. I did it quietly, not for Trevor, for my sister, for my mother, for peace at Thanksgiving. Trevor lifted a dark green fountain pen and clicked the cap against the barrel. Once, twice. The sound carried through the room. I knew that pen. It was a limited edition Pelican that cost $675. I had given it to him after I persuaded Human Resources to hire him. At the time, he had been unemployed for 8 months, and telling everyone the market simply failed to appreciate his talent. I had put my reputation behind his name. Now he was using my gift while taking my promotion. "Do not make this awkward, Elena," he said, offering me a soft smile that never reached his eyes. "You are still the technical backbone of the department. Honestly, I will need you more than ever. You can stay focused on the modeling, the dashboards, all the detail work you enjoy." Detail work. That was what he called the system that kept temperature-sensitive medication moving through 43 regional hubs. That was what he called the reports that had saved Ardent Vale nearly $22 million the previous year. That was what he called my career. I felt no urge to cry. I felt something cleaner. The kind of clarity that arrived after the last excuse finally died. The meeting was not merely office politics. It was the end of a plan that had started the night before. My mother had called while I was rehearsing the presentation for that exact role. Diane Mercer never wasted time pretending a demand was a request. "Elena, you need to let Trevor have this," she had said. "Paige is due in November. They already put money down on that house in Highlands Ranch, and the bank wants a higher income before closing. You do not have children. They do. You can afford to wait." I remembered staring at my laptop, certain I had misunderstood her. She continued, "Your sister needs stability. Trevor needs the title. A family is supposed to help its own. Help. That word had covered 1,000 thefts in my family. Help Paige with tuition. Help Trevor prepare for his interview. Help your father with his business records. Help your mother host the fundraiser. And now, help your brother-in-law take the position you earned." I had told her no. It was the first clean no I had given her in years. By morning, Malcolm had somehow decided Trevor possessed the exact leadership qualities I supposedly lacked. I could picture the rest without being told. A round of golf. A private call. Trevor repeating my ideas as though they had formed in his own head. My mother reminding him that I always came around eventually. They expected resistance, but only the familiar kind. A few angry words. A wounded silence. then surrender. Malcolm waited for me to accept the decision. Trevor kept tapping that expensive pen, already imagining me working beneath him. So I rose from my chair, slowly. I removed the security badge clipped to my jacket and placed it in the center of my performance review. The plastic struck the table with a flat, hard sound. Trevor stopped smiling. Malcolm frowned. For the first time that morning, neither man knew what came next. They believed I needed the company too much to leave. My family believed I needed their approval too much to refuse. Both beliefs had expired. I looked at Trevor. "Enjoy the dashboards," I said. Then I faced Malcolm. "And congratulations on your choice." I turned, opened the glass door, and stepped into the corridor. Behind me, nobody spoke. My heels landed against the polished concrete in an even rhythm. I did not rush. I did not look back. I had spent years walking into emergencies other people created. That morning, I walked away from one. "Elena." Trevor's voice followed me out of the boardroom. I kept moving. "Elena, stop." I reached the open office floor, where rows of gray workstations stretched beneath cold white lights. Conversations faded as people noticed my face. Then the empty badge clip on my jacket. I pulled a flattened moving box from beneath my desk and opened it. A framed photograph, my ceramic mug, a wireless mouse, 3 notebooks filled with ideas nobody had paid for. I placed each item inside with steady hands. Trevor arrived beside my desk, breathing harder than the short walk justified. "What are you doing?" he whispered. I folded the cardboard flaps outward, packing. His eyes darted toward the surrounding cubicles. "You cannot do this here. Everyone is watching." I picked up the photograph. That was the moment Trevor finally understood. I was not staging a protest. I was leaving. And for the first time since I had brought him into Ardent Vale, he looked afraid. "You are not leaving." Trevor planted one hand on the edge of my desk. His whisper carried more fear than authority. "Your mother is going to lose her mind. Paige and I have a closing date. We already selected the flooring. You cannot blow up our future because you are upset about one decision." I placed my notebooks inside the box. "Go back in there," he continued. "Tell Malcolm you overreacted. He has not processed anything through human resources yet. You can still fix this." I gave him nothing, not an argument, not an explanation, not even a glance. Trevor had always depended on controlling the story. At home I was jealous, at work I was difficult. Whenever he failed, I had supposedly misunderstood what he meant. But silence gave him nothing to reshape. What exactly is happening out here? Malcolm's voice rolled across the office floor. Every keyboard stopped. He came down the center aisle with his jaw clenched and his face darkening beneath the overhead lights. People lowered their eyes as he passed, but nobody returned to work. He stopped in front of me. "Elena, you will put those things back." I lifted my personal laptop from its docking stand. Malcolm pointed at me. "You do not storm out of an executive meeting. You do not discard company identification like a child throwing a fit. And you certainly do not resign without giving me the professional courtesy of notice." I slid the laptop into the box. His voice rose. "Walk through those doors today, and I will make certain nobody in medical distribution hires you again. I know hospital networks, pharmaceutical wholesalers, every serious operator between Denver and the West Coast. One call from me and your name becomes radioactive." The threat settled over the room. My coworkers watched from behind monitors and cubicle walls. Some looked frightened for me. Others looked embarrassed on Malcolm's behalf. They were waiting for the scene they understood. The powerful executive shouted. The employee folded. I looked directly at him. Then I opened my laptop. Trevor moved closer. "What are you doing?" I angled the screen away. Ardent Vale distributed vaccines, insulin, oncology medication, surgical supplies, and temperature-sensitive drugs to hospitals across 11 states. Yet beneath the polished branding, its technology was decades out of date. 3 years earlier, one severe cold chain failure had nearly destroyed an entire shipment of pediatric medication. I proposed a predictive routing platform. Malcolm laughed. He said software architecture belonged to information technology and reminded me that my job title contained the word analyst. So I built it myself, at night, on weekends, on equipment I purchased. The platform monitored refrigeration data, weather disruptions, inventory demand, driver availability, and hospital urgency in real time. It redirected critical shipments before delays became emergencies. It cut spoilage by 41% and reduced emergency air freight costs by millions. Ardent Vale's executives called it the company's intelligence layer. Trevor called it his network strategy. Neither of them owned it. Kestrel Logic Works did. My company, my source code, my servers. Ardent Veil had been using the platform under a zero-cost, revocable license. Their access continued only because I allowed it. I had built one safeguard for the day, allowing it no longer made sense. My fingers moved over the keyboard. I entered the private administrative portal, verified my identity, opened the licensing console, selected Ardent Veil Medical Distribution. A warning appeared. Terminating this license will disconnect all active client gateways. I clicked confirm. The system requested a second authorization. I entered a 12-character security phrase. Trevor leaned toward the screen. Elena, what did you just do? A progress ring filled. 20%. 47. 79. Then complete. A message appeared beneath a white checkmark. Client license revoked. All external access. I closed the computer. The snap sounded louder than Malcolm's threats. Trevor stared at the lid. What was that? I placed the charging cable on top and carefully tucked it beside my mug. Malcolm folded his arms. You are making the worst decision of your professional life. He had no idea. He believed I had abandoned a salary. In reality, I had removed the nervous system from his entire distribution network. Within minutes, refrigerated trucks would stop receiving revised delivery priorities. Hospital inventory dashboards would lose predictive updates. Warehouse teams would return to manual scheduling. The old software would still exist, technically, so did typewriters. Trevor's posture changed, only slightly. His shoulders tightened. His eyes shifted toward the operation screens mounted above the department. He knew enough to sense danger, not enough to stop it. I lifted the box. It was surprisingly light for something containing the last pieces of 11 years. Trevor stepped into my path. You cannot leave me with this mess. There it was. Not the company, not the patients, not the clients. Him. I met his eyes. You asked for the role. His mouth opened. No answer came. So led, I walked around him. Malcolm called after me. You will regret this by tonight. I continued toward the elevators. My heels struck the floor in measured beats. Behind me, the office remained unnaturally quiet. Then one of the large wall monitors flickered. A regional status panel changed from green to amber. Another followed. Trevor turned toward them. The first alarm sounded just as I pressed the elevator button. A soft electronic tone. Then another. The doors opened. I stepped inside and turned around. At the far end of the floor, Trevor stood beneath a growing field of amber warnings. Malcolm was shouting at someone near the control desk. Employees were reaching for phones. The collapse had already begun. The doors met between us. During the ride down, I waited for fear. It never arrived. What came instead was relief. Deep, cold, almost weightless. For years, I had carried my family's comfort like a second job. I repaired Trevor's mistakes. I absorbed my mother's accusations. I helped Paige maintain the life everyone insisted she deserved more than I did. I had mistaken exhaustion for loyalty. The elevator opened into the marble lobby. I crossed it without slowing. Outside, the Colorado sun was bright enough to make me squint. The sky above downtown Denver was a hard, endless blue. I walked to my car and placed the box on the passenger seat. My phone was already flashing. Human resources, Malcolm, Trevor, then my mother. 3 calls from Diane arrived before I started the engine. Messages stacked beneath them. Call me now. What did you do? Paige is sobbing. You are not going to ruin this for her. I did not open any of them. I held the power button until the screen went dark, placed the phone inside the glove compartment and shut it away. Then I drove home. No music. No calls, no voices telling me who needed me more. By the time I reached my loft in Rhino, the silence felt like freedom. I left my shoes beside the door, hung my jacket over a chair, and opened a bottle of Cabernet I had been saving for a celebration. This qualified. I poured 1 glass and carried my laptop to the kitchen island. Sunset burned orange against the brick walls of my loft as I entered the encrypted drive for Kestrel Logic Works. I had formed the company 3 years earlier, after Malcolm rejected my proposal for a predictive cold chain platform. At the time, Ardent Veil was losing entire medication shipments because its routing software reacted to problems hours after they happened. I showed Malcolm how real-time temperature data and weather modeling could prevent those losses. He barely looked at my proposal. Elena, you analyze operations, he said. You do not build enterprise software. So I stopped asking. I bought my own hardware, registered the company, and spent nights teaching a machine to see trouble before humans did. The first version was ugly, the second was unstable, the 7th worked. It tracked refrigeration units, warehouse capacity, storms, traffic, expiration windows, and hospital inventory shortages. When one route failed, the platform shifted priority shipments before the dispatch team even knew a delay existed. I introduced it quietly into my own workflow. Within weeks, my region's losses dropped. Then other departments wanted access. Then Malcolm wanted company-wide access. He never asked who owned the architecture. Trevor never cared. They only cared that the numbers made them look brilliant. Before granting access, I had Maya Desai draft a licensing agreement. Ardent Vale paid nothing. Kestrel retained every ownership right. The license could be ended by me, at any time without advance notice. No ambiguity, no loophole, no gift disguised as corporate property. I opened the signed agreement and read the termination clause again. My pulse remained steady. I had not damaged their system. I had stopped lending them mine. That distinction was going to matter. I closed the file and took a drink. Across 11 states, Ardent Vale's staff would now be attempting to manage thousands of sensitive deliveries with software built for a much smaller company. Refrigerated trailers would still move. Warehouses would still open. Phones would still ring. But nobody would know what needed attention first. The company had spent years treating my platform like plumbing, invisible when it worked, catastrophic when it stopped. I finished the wine and decided the rest could wait. For 4 days, I disappeared from their world. I ran beside the South Platte River in the early mornings. I cooked real meals instead of eating at my desk. I finished a mystery novel that had been sitting unopened for 6 months. Most importantly, I slept. 8 uninterrupted hours, no emergency calls from Trevor, no midnight messages from Malcolm. No guilt wrapped in my mother's voice. By Monday morning, my body felt unfamiliar, rested, light, mine. Sunlight spilled through the loft windows while I made coffee. After breakfast, I walked down to the parking garage and retrieved my phone from the glove compartment. I brought it upstairs, connected the charger, and pressed the power button. The screen came alive. Then the phone began vibrating so hard it moved across the counter. Notification after notification appeared. Voicemails, messages, urgent emails, missed calls, 127 of them, 34 from Malcolm, 41 from Trevor. The others came from human resources, Ardent Vale executives, my parents' page, and numbers I did not recognize. I opened the message list. Malcolm had started with orders. Call me immediately. Restore access. This is a direct instruction. By Saturday morning, his tone had changed. We are prepared to discuss your position. By Sunday night, the threats returned. You will be held personally responsible for all losses. Trevor's messages were less controlled. What did you shut down? Send me the administrator credentials. People are asking questions. Elena, this is not funny. Summit Care is threatening to suspend us. Please answer. The picture formed quickly. Distribution centers had reverted to manual scheduling. Refrigerated trucks were waiting for updated delivery priorities. Several hospitals had received routine supplies while urgent oncology shipments remained trapped at regional hubs. Ardent Vale had begun chartering aircraft to prevent temperature-sensitive medication from expiring. Each emergency flight cost tens of thousands of dollars. Summit Care Pharmacy Network, the largest client in the company, had demanded a full explanation. Trevor, the new senior director of network intelligence, could provide none. I lifted my coffee and took a slow drink. 4 days earlier, he had told me I was best suited for tedious work. Now the tedious work was eating him alive. A pounding struck my front door. Not a knock, a full-handed assault. The second blow shook the framed print beside the entryway. I checked the time. 7:46 in the morning. They had not even waited until 8. I crossed the loft and opened the door. My family filled the hallway. Paige stood behind the others, one hand resting beneath her pregnant stomach, and the other wrapped around a cream leather handbag. Her auburn curls were perfect, but the makeup beneath her eyes had begun to streak. My mother stood rigid in a pale blue coat. My father's mouth was pressed into a hard line. Trevor was in front. He pushed past me before I could speak. The others followed him inside. 4 days earlier, Trevor had looked ready for a magazine cover. That morning he looked wrecked. His suit was wrinkled. A dark coffee stain marked one cuff. His sandy hair had collapsed across his forehead, and the expensive watch on his wrist hung loose because he had lost enough sleep to forget to fasten it properly. He paced into my living room. Turn it back on. I closed the door. Trevor spun toward me. Right now, Elena, I need the master credentials and the recovery keys. I leaned against the door and folded my arms. For what? His face tightened. Do not do this. I no longer work for Ardent Vale. You know exactly what I am talking about. He crossed the room in 3 quick steps. Our network is blind. 43 hubs are working from printed manifests. Dispatchers cannot see live refrigeration alerts. Hospital orders are being prioritized by people with highlighters and spreadsheets. He dragged both hands through his hair. Summit Care has 7 critical shipments sitting in the wrong facilities. Their executive team has been calling me all weekend. Gabriel Cortez is threatening to suspend the entire contract unless we restore the platform before noon. I watched him struggle to breathe. The smooth confidence was gone. All that remained was a frightened man standing inside a title he could not carry. Then you should solve it, I said. His eyes widened. Elena, this company could lose hundreds of millions of dollars. You are the senior director. You locked us out. I ended a license. You changed every access key. They were my keys. He pointed at me with a shaking hand. You are doing this because you are jealous. The accusation was so absurd that I almost admired it. Trevor was inside my home, begging for access to software he had claimed to manage, and he still needed me to be the failure. You could not accept that Malcolm chose me, he continued. So you manufactured a crisis to humiliate me. I looked at him calmly. You do not need my help to be humiliated, Trevor. His jaw flexed. Behind him, my mother made a sharp sound of disapproval. Then she stepped forward, wearing the expression she had used to control me since childhood. Elena, Diane said softly, that is enough. Diane moved between Trevor and me as though she were protecting everyone from my unreasonable behavior. Her voice softened. It was the voice she used when she wanted obedience to sound like love. Your brother-in-law is under enormous pressure, she said. He is frightened. He said things he did not mean. She reached for my forearm. You are family, Elena. Whatever happened at the office, you cannot stand here and watch Paige's husband lose his career. Restore the system. Then all of you can discuss the promotion when everyone is calmer. I removed her hand from my sleeve. No. The word landed quietly. Diane blinked. My father stepped forward before she could recover. Gordon Mercer had spent his entire adult life believing volume created authority. He pulled his shoulders back, raised his chin, and spoke to me as though I were 16 again. Listen to your mother. His thick eyebrows drew together. You have gone far beyond what is reasonable. Trevor is trying to provide for your sister and their child. You are deliberately interfering with his work because your pride was wounded. He gestured toward the hallway. Give him the passwords. Call Malcolm. Apologize for walking out. This whole mess can be resolved before it damages the family's reputation. I stared at him. My pride was wounded? That is exactly what happened. I built the platform keeping Ardent Vale alive. I prepared every forecast Trevor used to impress Malcolm. I rewrote every client presentation that put him in position for that promotion. I pointed toward Trevor. He took the title, he took the salary. Now the work belongs to him too. Gordon's mouth tightened. You always have to make everything sound dramatic. Diane's patience broke. Why are you being so selfish? The sweetness vanished from her voice. She pointed toward Paige and Trevor. They are starting a real family. They have responsibilities you cannot understand. Paige is carrying a child. Trevor is trying to secure their home. And you are destroying all of it because you are alone and unhappy. Paige lowered her eyes at exactly the right moment. My mother continued. You have always resented your sister. You did the same thing when you refused to help with her car. There it was, the old accusation. The family story, repeated so many times that they had forgotten the truth beneath it. I stepped closer to Diane. You mean the car you wanted me to buy with my college savings? Her expression flickered. I kept going. I worked closing shifts at a 24-hour diner for 2 years. I came home smelling like grease at 3 a.m, slept for 4 hours, and went to class. I could see Paige watching me now. You wanted me to empty that account so she could lease a new Range Rover. Elena, Gordon warned. The same year you bought Paige a brand new convertible as a graduation gift. Do not speak to your mother in that tone. I turned toward him. You gave Paige rewards. You gave me obligations. His face reddened. We put a roof over your head. You provided a bedroom and a list of debts I supposedly owed for existing. I felt years of swallowed words rising, but my voice stayed level. Paige received dance lessons, vacations, a car, and help with rent. I wore her old clothes and studied at a folding table in the laundry room. Diane shook her head. That is a cruel distortion. No. It is an accurate memory. I looked at all four of them. You placed Paige on a platform, then expected me to hold it up. That arrangement is finished. I am not funding Trevor's career any more than I funded her car. Paige inhaled sharply. The timing was perfect. She stepped backward and pressed both hands against her stomach. Oh, Trevor turned immediately. What is it? Paige's face crumpled. Tears appeared with astonishing speed. The baby. She leaned against the wall. This stress is hurting the baby. Trevor rushed to her and wrapped one arm around her shoulders. Paige looked at me through wet lashes. You want us to lose the house. You want Trevor to lose everything. I never said that. You did not have to. She bent slightly and gripped Trevor's jacket. My stomach hurts. I cannot breathe. Diane hurried to her other side. This environment is poisonous, my mother said, rubbing Paige's back. No pregnant woman should be exposed to this kind of hostility. Trevor glared at me. Look at her. I did. Paige's hand covered most of her face. But through the gap between her fingers, she was watching me, waiting. This performance had worked since childhood. Whenever I refused something, Paige became fragile. She cried. My mother accused, my father commanded. Then I repaired whatever problem they had created. I apologized, I paid, I surrendered. For 36 years they had followed the same routine because it always reached the same ending. But something inside me had changed. The guilt was still recognizable. It just no longer had teeth. You are hurting your own sister, Trevor said. What kind of person does that? Diane pulled Paige closer. I hope this promotion was worth tearing the family apart. I turned away from them and walked into the kitchen. Behind me their voices rose. Trevor accused me of sabotaging him. My mother called me heartless. My father demanded that I return and answer him. Paige cried louder. I picked up my coffee. It was still warm. I took a slow drink and looked through the windows toward the Denver skyline. Their noise became distant, not because they had quieted down, because I had stopped accepting responsibility for it. I returned to the living room and leaned against the kitchen island, holding the mug between both hands. Trevor stood beside Paige, murmuring into her hair while staring at me with open hatred. Diane rubbed my sister's shoulders. Gordon looked ready to deliver another speech about respect. All four of them were waiting for me to fold. I let the silence stretch. Then I set my mug down. Are you finished? Gordon opened his mouth. I raised one finger. He stopped. The gesture surprised him more than shouting ever could. Since everyone came here to defend Trevor's remarkable career, I said, we should discuss what he actually does at Ardent Vale. Trevor went still. I turned toward my parents. For 18 months, he has not completed one original network analysis. The room changed, only slightly, but I felt it. Every quarterly forecast he presented had come from my models. Every hospital risk summary had been written at my desk. Every strategy Malcolm praised had passed through my hands first. Trevor's face lost a shade of color. Elena, he said. It was not a warning, it was a plea. I looked directly at him, and I kept talking. Trevor cannot build a basic inventory model without copying one of my templates, I said. His eyes hardened. Stop. If someone asked him to explain why refrigerated shipments were failing along the southern corridor, he would repeat the summary I emailed him last Wednesday. That is a lie, Diane said. I ignored her. He does not understand temperature risk scoring. He does not know how the warehouse priority engine works. He cannot read the diagnostic logs. He spent most of his time taking clients to lunch and telling Malcolm that my results came from his leadership. Trevor stepped away from Paige. Elena, shut your mouth. His voice cracked on the final word. Gordon looked from him to me. For the first time that morning, doubt entered my father's face. I continued. Summit Care stayed with Ardent Vale because I personally monitored their highest-risk deliveries every weekend. When their oncology distribution center lost power last winter, I rerouted 18 shipments before Trevor even answered his phone. I turned toward my parents' might. He received praise for that recovery. I received another assignment. Trevor took one step toward me. You are trying to destroy my reputation. No, I am describing it accurately. Diane shook her head in disbelief. Malcolm said Trevor was one of the most promising executives in the company. Malcolm also believed Ardent Vale owned my software. The room fell quiet. Gordon frowned. What does that mean? It means the platform Trevor came here demanding does not belong to Ardent Vale. My mother stared at me. You worked there. I did. Then they own what you made. No. I crossed my arms. I developed the platform at home, outside my contracted hours, on equipment I purchased. Ardent Vale never paid me to create software. My employment agreement did not include software development, and I never signed an intellectual property transfer. Trevor's face became pale. That told them more than my explanation did, I continued. 3 years ago, I formed Kestrel Logic Works LLC. The copyright registrations, architecture filings, and licensing documents are all in the company's name. Diane opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The idea that I had built a company without asking their permission seemed to confuse her more than anything else I had said. Gordon turned toward Trevor. Did you know about this? Trevor did not answer. His silence was enough. I granted Ardent Vale a free revocable license, I said. They paid nothing for the software. I allowed them to use it because it improved patient delivery and made my job manageable. I looked at Trevor. When Malcolm handed my position to a man who could not operate the platform, I ended that permission. Paige straightened. So you shut everything down on purpose. I disconnected my property. You knew what would happen. I knew Ardent Vale would have to operate its own business. Trevor's humiliation shifted into rage. He moved closer, fists tightening at his sides. You think paperwork will protect you? His voice shook. Malcolm has already involved the legal department. They are preparing a lawsuit for corporate sabotage. They have your system logs. They know you intentionally crippled the network. I watched him carefully. He wanted fear. I gave him none. You are going to be arrested, he continued. Federal investigators will seize your laptop. They will freeze your accounts. You will spend everything you have defending yourself. He pointed at me. And I will testify that you acted out of jealousy. Paige looked relieved. My mother looked triumphant. They believed the threat had restored the natural order. Trevor lowered his voice. Give me the access keys now, and I may be able to persuade Malcolm to handle this internally. I almost felt sorry for him. He was offering mercy for a crime I had not committed while demanding property he had no right to possess. Gordon stepped between us. I do not care about licenses or technical language, he said. His tone had changed. It was deeper now. More dangerous. I do not care whose name appears on some document. This has gone far enough. He pointed toward the hallway leading to my bedroom and office. Get your laptop. I did not move. You will hand it to Trevor. He will return to the company, restore the system, and protect this family from public humiliation. No. His face darkened. Elena, I am not giving him anything. You will do what you are told. He stepped closer and held out his hand. For a moment, I saw every version of my father at once. The man who controlled the dinner table. The man who decided which daughter deserved help. The man who believed obedience was gratitude. Bring me the computer, he said. Now. I reached into the pocket of my lounge pants. Trevor's attention snapped toward my hand. I removed my phone. Then I opened the keypad. 911. I held the screen where all four of them it. Gordon's expression shifted. You would not. You entered my home without permission. Trevor threatened me. You are now demanding that I surrender private property. I placed my thumb above the call button. You have 30 seconds to leave, Diane gasped. Elena, we are your parents, 25. You cannot call the police on your own family. Watch me. Paige stopped crying. Trevor looked toward the door. The transformation was immediate. Their confidence vanished because consequences had entered the room. Gordon glanced at the phone, then at the windows overlooking the street. The nearest police station was only minutes away. He knew it. So did I. This is insane, he said. 20. Diane grabbed his arm. Gordon. He pulled away from her and pointed at me. You have lost your mind. 15. Trevor moved toward Paige. Let us go. My sister stared at me with naked fury now that fragility had failed. You are a horrible person. I kept my thumb steady. 10. They moved quickly. Diane guided Paige toward the door. Trevor followed, looking over his shoulder as though memorizing the room. Gordon went last. At the threshold he turned. When this destroys your life, do not come to us. I met his eyes. I stopped coming to you years ago. His face tightened. Then he stepped into the hallway. Trevor paused behind him. This is not finished. 5. He left. Gordon slammed the door so hard the walls shook. I locked the deadbolt. Then the security chain. Their footsteps faded toward the elevator. For the first time since they arrived, the loft was silent. I lowered the phone. I had not called the police. But I had been ready to. That was the difference. For years, my family believed my boundaries were requests they could negotiate. That morning, they learned otherwise. I stood alone in the center of my living room and listened to the quiet. The war had begun, and for once I was not afraid of it. The following morning, I stepped from a rideshare in front of the Ember Room. It was an expensive steakhouse near Union Station. Dark windows, brass lettering, heavy doors that seemed built to keep ordinary problems outside. Deals worth millions were made there over dry-aged beef and bourbon. That morning, we were preparing for something far more destructive. A hostess led me beyond the empty bar to a curved booth near the rear of the dining room. Maya Desai was already waiting. She was 53, tall and impossible to intimidate. Her salt and pepper hair was cut close around her face. Narrow glasses rested low on her nose. Her charcoal suit looked severe enough to qualify as a warning. Maya specialized in intellectual property disputes and corporate litigation. She had represented Kestrel Logic Works from the day I created it. More importantly, she had insisted that every decision be documented before Ardent Vale ever touched my platform. I slid into the booth and placed a thick envelope on the white tablecloth. Maya glanced at it. "You look rested." "I am. Interesting. Your former employer has been featured in 3 industry publications since yesterday." I raised an eyebrow. For innovation? For losing control of its distribution network? She lifted her sparkling water. One headline called it the largest cold chain breakdown in the region this decade. I pushed the envelope toward her. Then Malcolm must have enjoyed his evening. Maya opened the flap. "A courier delivered that to my building at 6:15 this morning." She removed a stack of papers and began reading. It was a cease and desist notice from Ardent Vale. The first page accused me of deliberate interference with company operations. The second demanded every password, recovery token, administrative credential, and development file connected to the platform. By the 4th page, they were threatening civil damages, criminal referrals, permanent injunctions, and asset seizure. Malcolm's signature appeared at the bottom. Maya read the final paragraph, then she laughed, not politely. She leaned back and laughed until a server near the kitchen looked over. When she recovered, she removed her glasses. "This is embarrassing. For me or them, for the attorneys who allowed Malcolm to sign it." She dropped the papers onto the table. "They are treating confidence like evidence. It is not." I studied her face. "You are certain?" "Elena, we prepared for this exact conflict." Her tone became serious. "Kestrel owns the platform. We have dated source code archives, equipment purchase records, server histories, copyright registrations, and development logs showing where and when the architecture was created." She tapped the envelope. "Your employment contract described you as an operations intelligence analyst. It did not hire you to produce commercial software. It contained no assignment clause covering independent inventions. A server brought coffee and left without interrupting." Maya waited until he was gone. "Ardent Vale never commissioned the platform," she continued. "They never paid a development fee. They never purchased an ownership interest. They operated under a revocable license that Malcolm's office accepted 3 years ago." I exhaled slowly. The legal facts were not new. Still, hearing them spoken aloud settled something inside me. Trevor said Malcolm had contacted federal authorities. Maya gave me a flat look. "Trevor also believes expensive clothing qualifies as expertise." I almost smiled. "Could they accuse me of damaging medical distribution?" "They can accuse you of controlling the weather if they like." She stirred her coffee. "A criminal sabotage claim requires more than financial pain. You did not erase their databases. You did not corrupt their equipment. You did not enter their network after your resignation. I withdrew access to your property." She leaned toward me. "If someone lets a neighbor use a private driveway, that does not give the neighbor ownership of the land. Ending permission is not destruction." The last trace of tension in my shoulders began to release. Then Maya's expression changed. The humor disappeared. She reached beside her and placed a slim folder between us. "There is another issue." I looked at the folder. "What kind of issue?" "The kind that makes their cease and desist letter look almost helpful." She opened it. Inside were pages of security records from the Kestrel servers, rows of dates, connection attempts, network addresses, failed authorization requests, thousands of them. Maya turned the first page toward me. "These started less than 2 hours after you revoked Ardent Vale's license." I scanned the entries. Every request came from a range of corporate addresses I recognized. "They are trying to get back in." "Yes. How?" "Password spraying at first. Then automated credential testing. Yesterday afternoon they moved to a brute force process against the encrypted administrative gateway." I looked up. "They are attacking my server. repeatedly. She pointed to another column. The attempts came from machines inside Ardent Vale's technology department. Somebody with executive authority approved the work. Their engineers would not launch this volume of intrusion attempts on their own. Malcolm, or Trevor, probably both. They had spent 4 days accusing me of unlawful interference while actively trying to break into my private system. Maya watched the realization move across my face. They think recovering access will save them, she said. Instead, they are producing evidence for us. What kind of exposure are they creating? Allowed access to a protected computer system, attempted theft of proprietary code, circumvention of security controls, potential copyright violations. She paused. And because the attacks cross state lines through cloud infrastructure, they may have invited federal jurisdiction. I sat back. Malcolm had threatened to put me in prison. At that exact moment, his own company was generating records of conduct far closer to an actual cybercrime. They do not understand the platform, I said. No, they think the login screen is the only barrier. Maya's mouth curved slightly. Entitled people often mistake a locked door for an invitation to find a larger hammer. I looked again at the failed attempts. They have no chance of reaching the source repository. I know. The administrative gateway is separated from the development environment. I know that too. Then why are you worried? Maya did not answer immediately. Instead, she closed the slim folder and reached into her briefcase. This time she removed a larger black case. A numbered security strip sealed its edge. She placed it on the table carefully. The weight of her movements changed the atmosphere between us. What is that? I asked. Before you left Ardent Vale, your automated backups preserved a complete operational snapshot. Yes, I reviewed it to make certain nobody could alter the history and accuse you of creating false records after the shutdown. My mouth went dry, and? While checking the billing integrations, I found activity that had nothing to do with the software dispute. She broke the seal. The plastic strip snapped. Maya opened the case and removed several pages of highlighted transaction data. At first, I saw ordinary SummitCare invoices, medication shipments, refrigeration surcharges, emergency transfers. Then I noticed the adjustments. Tiny deductions hidden beneath automated billing entries, fractions so small that no individual hospital accountant would question them. But they appeared again and again. Across thousands of transactions, I pulled the top page closer. Who entered these? Maya held my gaze. Trevor. The restaurant seemed to go silent around us. He was not only claiming your work, Elena. She placed one finger beside a column of hidden transfers. He was stealing from SummitCare. I stared at the figures. Trevor? Maya nodded. She moved one page over the next, revealing the transaction trail in sequence. He inserted false adjustment lines into SummitCare's automated invoices. Each one was small enough to disappear inside fuel surcharges, refrigeration fees, and emergency handling costs. I studied the highlighted entries. Some were less than $1, others were only a few cents. On a single invoice, nobody would notice. But SummitCare processed thousands of medication shipments through Ardent Vale every week. Small theft multiplied by volume. How long? I asked. 7 months. Maya placed a summary sheet in front of me. At the bottom, one total was boxed in red. $1,470,000. My fingers tightened around the paper. Trevor had stood inside my home and accused me of destroying Paige's future, all while hiding nearly $1.5 million taken from the company's largest client. Where is it now? In a temporary internal reserve account. So he has not withdrawn it, not yet. Maya turned to another page. The money was staged to move through 2 shell entities, then into a private account in the British Virgin Islands. I followed the arrows between account numbers. The structure was deliberate, layered, designed by someone who had spent time thinking about how to make money disappear. This was not impulsive, I said. No. He planned it for months. Maya leaned back. The final transfer required executive authorization, specifically Tier 6 financial clearance. I knew that access level. Only division vice presidents and senior directors responsible for strategic systems received it. My eyes lifted from the papers. The promotion. Yes. The boardroom returned to me in sharp fragments, Malcolm pushing my review aside. Trevor clicking the pen I had bought him. My mother demanding that I step away because Paige needed a house. Trevor had not wanted the position merely for prestige. The larger office had not mattered. The raise had not mattered. Even Paige's mortgage had been secondary. He needed the security clearance attached to the title. Without it, the stolen money remained trapped inside Ardent Vale. With it, he could approve the final release and send the full amount beyond the company's reach. That is why he was so desperate, I said. Maya nodded. He expected the promotion to complete the transaction. But I disabled the platform before he could. You froze the billing integration along with the distribution system. The holding account could no longer communicate with the authorization layer. I looked down at the transaction logs again. My resignation had not only exposed Trevor's incompetence. It had locked his stolen money inside the building. That explained his panic, the sleepless eyes, the threats, the frantic demand for my credentials. He had not come to my loft because medication deliveries were failing. He came because $1,470,000 was sitting beyond his reach. A colder question entered my mind. What happened after the transfer? Maya did not answer at once. Her silence told me the answer would be worse. She pulled another document from the case. It contained system commands drafted under Trevor's corporate credentials but not yet executed. What is that? A secondary sequence. I read the first few lines. They were designed to alter billing records inside the platform, not erase them, corrupt them, duplicate certain charges, break the reconciliation between shipment data and client invoices. He planned to damage Kestrel. Yes, why? To hide the missing money. Maya pointed to a cluster of commands. Once the transfer cleared, he intended to inject this sequence into the Summit Care billing module. It would create a broad accounting failure across hundreds of transactions. The truth arrived slowly. Then all at once, he was going to call it a software malfunction. Exactly. I stopped breathing for a second. Maya's voice remained calm. The audit would discover missing funds and corrupted invoices at the same time. Trevor would claim the platform failed. Malcolm would demand an explanation from the developer. You. I looked through the restaurant toward the bar, but I no longer saw it. I saw Trevor sitting across from me in the boardroom, smiling. Promising to keep me on his team, he had needed me close, not to do his work, to absorb the explosion. He would have said I made an error. He would have said you concealed a defect. He would have blamed the theft on the corrupted billing records. And because I wrote the system, investigators would begin with me. Maya folded her hands. They would seize your computers, review your finances, examine every line of code. Trevor would cooperate publicly and present himself as the responsible executive who discovered the failure. My stomach turned. He planned to make himself the hero. And you the criminal. The conference room humiliation had not been the end of his betrayal. It had been the first step of an execution. Trevor needed my title. Then he needed my software. Finally, he needed my name attached to his crime. My mother had pushed me toward that outcome because Paige wanted a larger house. Whether Diane knew the full plan or not no longer mattered. She had still demanded that I surrender my career to a man preparing to destroy me. He came into my home yesterday. I said. Maya watched me. He held Paige while they called me cruel. He threatened to testify against me. He was frightened. He was guilty. Both can be true. I looked again at the block transfer. By walking out when I did, I had ruined every stage of Trevor's plan. He could not move the money. He could not inject the false failure. He could not control the records, and the untouched server history now preserved the evidence against him. He needed me to restore access, I said. Yes, not only to restart operations, no. He needed to finish the theft. Maya nodded once, and then he needed the system to fail in a way he could blame on you. A vibration sounded against the table. My phone screen lit up beside the coffee cup. A high-priority email had arrived. The sender was Malcolm Rourke. The subject appeared in capital letters. Mandative appearance. Final nodder. I opened it. Maya leaned forward as I read. Malcolm ordered me to report to Ardent Vale's main boardroom at 8 the next morning. Gabriel Cortez, the CEO of Summit Care Pharmacy Network, was flying to Denver personally. He would be present. According to Malcolm, the meeting was my final opportunity to prevent criminal prosecution. I scrolled down. The demands were simple. Bring my laptop. Restore the platform. Transfer every ownership right held by Kestrel Logic Works to Ardent Vale. Sign a permanent confidentiality agreement. Give Trevor unrestricted administrative control. In exchange, Malcolm claimed the company might choose not to report me for theft, cyber-sabotage, and corporate espionage. I passed the phone to Maya. She read the email once, then again. A slow smile appeared on her face. What? I asked. She placed the phone beside the black case. Malcolm just threatened you in writing to force the surrender of a private asset. He thinks I will be afraid of Summit Care's CEO. He also has no idea Trevor stole from that CEO. The meaning settled between us. Malcolm believed he had arranged my surrender. Trevor believed he was one restored password away from escaping with the money. Neither man knew we had the transfer logs. Neither knew Gabriel Cortez was about to walk into a room with the person who could prove exactly who had been stealing from his company. Maya closed the evidence case. They built an ambush for you. I looked at Malcolm's message. Yes. They expect you to arrive alone, accept responsibility, and hand them the platform. I met her eyes. Then we should let them believe that. Maya studied me for several seconds. Before we do that, understand what tomorrow means. I do know, you understand the legal strategy. I am asking whether you understand the personal cost. She folded her glasses and placed them beside her coffee. When we expose Trevor in front of Malcolm, Ardent Vale's board, and Gabriel Cortez, there will be no private resolution. His career will be finished. A federal investigation will follow. Your sister will blame you. Your parents will choose the version of events that protects their image. They already chose. This will make that choice permanent. I closed Malcolm's email. Trevor planned to send me to prison. Yes, my parents tried to force me to surrender the evidence that could protect me. Yes, then permanence is not a problem. Maya held my gaze. Finally, she nodded. Good. She placed the black evidence case in front of me. Tomorrow we let Malcolm speak first. Let him threaten you. Let him describe you as unstable. Let Trevor agree with him, so they commit to the story. Exactly. She reached for the check. The more confident they become, the harder the truth will land. I slipped the case into my tote. Tomorrow is going to be ugly. Maya stood. No, she said. Ugly is what they did in private. She buttoned her jacket. Tomorrow will be accurate. I left the Ember Room shortly before noon. The sunlight outside was sharp and white, reflecting from the glass towers near Union Station. People moved around me, carrying coffee, checking phones, rushing back to ordinary jobs. My life no longer felt ordinary. Inside my bag, the server logs and transaction records seemed heavier than paper. They held Trevor's theft, Malcolm's negligence, and proof that the promotion I had lost was never really a promotion. It was a key to a vault. I returned to my loft and unlocked the door. The silence inside felt different now. Not peaceful, focused. I had just set my tote on the kitchen island when my phone rang. Gordon Mercer, my father. I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then curiosity won. I answered without greeting him. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then his voice arrived, soft and warm, artificially warm. Elena, sweetheart. I almost laughed. He had not called me sweetheart in years. Not unless he needed something. Your mother and I have been worried, he continued. This morning became emotional. People said things they regret. I walked to the windows and looked down at the street. I am listening. We want to help you before this becomes irreversible. There was the word again. Help. He lowered his voice as though sharing confidential advice. Malcolm is furious, but Trevor believes he can calm him down. He has been speaking on your behalf. I closed my eyes. Trevor had planned to frame me for stealing almost $1.5 million. Now he was supposedly protecting me. If you come to the office tomorrow, Gordon said, admit that you acted impulsively and restore the system. Trevor may convince human resources not to terminate your benefits immediately. How generous. Elena, do not make this harder. What happens after I restore it? A pause. Trevor is willing to keep you in the department. In what role? My father hesitated. As part of his support team. I turned away from the window. He wants me to work for him. You would still have a salary. You would still have health insurance. And once everyone sees you cooperating, perhaps the company will reconsider the legal action. He spoke more quickly now. Trevor even said you could function as his technical assistant. You are good at that kind of work. The cruelty of it was almost elegant. They wanted me to apologize to the man who stole my promotion, give him my company, restore access to his hidden money, then return to my cubicle and serve him. Also, Paige could keep her house. You are asking me to hand Trevor a multi-million-dollar asset, I said. I am asking you to behave like a sister. His softness cracked. You have always had trouble seeing beyond yourself. I remained silent. He pulled his voice under control again. Your mother has been crying all day. Paige is frightened for the baby. Trevor could lose everything. Do you really want that on your conscience? Trevor made his choices. So did you. Yes, for once we agreed. Gordon exhaled sharply. You are about to destroy your own life because of wounded pride. No, my voice was calm. I am about to stop Trevor from destroying mine. What does that mean? It means tomorrow will not go the way he expects. My father became quiet. Then his tone hardened. Elena, I am warning you. Do not humiliate this family in front of strangers. I looked at the black case on my kitchen counter. They should have thought about that before making me the sacrifice. I ended the call. Before Gordon could ring again, I opened his contact and blocked the number. Then Diane, Paige, Trevor. 4 names disappeared from my active life in less than a minute. I expected grief. What I felt was space. No more surprise calls. No more demands disguised as emergencies. No more listening to people explain why my future belonged to someone else. I set the phone face down, then I began preparing. At an office supply store, I purchased the largest reinforced binder they carried, 2 packs of archival dividers, plastic sleeves, colored labels, and enough paper to make the cashier glance at me twice. Back home, I connected my laser printer. The first section contained Kestrel's ownership records, corporate registration, copyright certificates, development timestamps, hardware receipts, archived code histories. The second section contained Ardent Vale's license. I highlighted every clause confirming that access was free, conditional, and revocable. The third section documented the intrusion attempts, thousands of unauthorized login requests, corporate network addresses, exact times, escalation patterns. The fourth section belonged to Trevor, false invoice adjustments, hidden reserve accounts, credential signatures, the scheduled transfer of $1,470,000, the destination account in the British Virgin Islands. Finally, I added the dormant corruption sequence he intended to use against the Summit Care billing records. By midnight, the binder contained 612 pages. Every accusation led to evidence. Every piece of evidence led to a name. I separated the sections with bold tabs so nobody in the boardroom could pretend confusion. Ownership, license, intrusion, theft, planned cover-up. The printer released the final sheet. I closed the metal rings. The binder weighed more than 11 pounds. It felt less like paperwork than a verdict waiting to be read. One task remained. I opened an encrypted contact directory I had created for emergency system failures. Summit Care's executive numbers were restricted, but I had maintained direct escalation information because hospital supply crises did not respect office hours. Gabriel Cortez's private number appeared near the top. I checked the time. 12:38 in the morning. He had flown to Denver because his pharmacy network was collapsing. He would still be awake, I called. The line rang once, twice, then a deep voice answered. Gabriel Cortez. Mr. Cortez, my name is Elena Park. Silence, I continued. I own Kestrel Logic Works. I developed the platform Ardent Vale used to manage Summit temperature-controlled distribution. His tone sharpened. You are the former employee Malcolm mentioned. I am the person Malcolm intends to blame tomorrow. Another pause. What do you want? To make certain you enter that meeting with the correct question. I looked at the binder. The outage was not caused by a software defect. I terminated Ardent Vale's license after discovering circumstances that placed your accounts at risk. What circumstances? An internal theft involving approximately $1,470,000. The silence on the line became absolute. I have the transaction history, I said. I have the user credentials. I have the destination account and the code prepared to conceal the missing funds. Gabriel's voice dropped. Who? I would rather show you the authenticated records in person. You are asking me to trust you. No. I am asking you to review evidence before trusting anyone in that room. He said nothing for several seconds. Then he asked, Will you be at Ardent Vale at 8? Yes, so will I. The call ended. I placed the phone beside the binder. By sunrise, Malcolm would still believe he had summoned a frightened former employee. Trevor would believe one last threat could recover his money. My family would believe I was walking into the office to surrender. They were all wrong. I was bringing 612 pages of truth, and the man Trevor had stolen from was now waiting to read them. The morning air was cold enough to sting my lungs. I stepped out of the car and looked up at Ardent Vale's glass headquarters. For 11 years, I had entered that building as an employee. That morning, I entered as the owner of the asset keeping it alive. The binder rested against my left hip. 612 pages, 11 pounds. Every step toward the entrance made the metal rings shift inside the black cover. At reception, a temporary visitor badge waited beneath my name. The security guard who had greeted me every weekday for years glanced at the badge, then at the binder. His expression told me the rumors had reached the lobby. "Morning, Miss Park." "Morning, Daniel." He returned my identification without asking questions. The lobby was louder than usual. Executives crossed the marble floor in tense clusters. Employees spoke into headsets while carrying printed manifests. 2 warehouse managers stood beside the elevators arguing over emergency insulin deliveries. The damage was no longer hidden behind computer screens. Ardent Vale was failing in public. I entered the elevator and pressed the executive floor button. The metal doors reflected a woman I almost did not recognize. My black hair was cut into its usual blunt line beneath my jaw. I wore a fitted ivory blouse beneath a deep gray suit, with simple black heels and no jewelry except a steel watch. Nothing dramatic, nothing fragile. I did not look like someone arriving to apologize. The elevator opened. The executive corridor stretched ahead of me beneath soft recessed lighting. Through the glass walls at the far end, I could already see the boardroom. Malcolm sat near the head of the table. Trevor sat several chairs away. 3 corporate attorneys occupied one side. Other board members filled the remaining seats. One chair near the front remained empty. Gabriel Cortez had not arrived yet. Good. Malcolm needed time to speak freely. I pushed open the glass door. Every conversation stopped. Malcolm looked at the binder first, then at me. His face was flushed, but his posture remained confident. He believed the room itself gave him authority. "Elena," he said, "no greeting, no courtesy." Trevor leaned back in his chair. He wore a new midnight blue suit with a pale gold tie. The tailoring was perfect. The man inside it looked exhausted. His Pelican pen rested between his fingers. Click, click, the same sound from the promotion meeting. When our eyes met, he smiled. Slowly, confidently. He believed my presence meant I had surrendered. The binder, to him, was probably an apology packet. Perhaps a list of conditions I hoped they would consider after I restored the system. He had no idea his financial history was divided into labeled sections inside it. Malcolm gestured toward an isolated chair at the opposite end of the table. "Sit." The chair had been placed several feet away from everyone else. Not part of the meeting, on display before it, I remained standing. Malcolm's jaw tightened. "We have lost 4 days to your behavior. I will not lose another minute because you suddenly believe ordinary professional rules no longer apply to you." I walked past the isolated chair. My heels struck the floor in steady beats. I stopped beside the empty seat reserved for Gabriel Cortez and placed the binder on the table. The impact produced a deep thud. One of the attorneys looked up sharply. "I will remain standing," I said. Malcolm pushed back from the table. "You do not control this meeting." "I did not say I did. You walked out without notice. You intentionally disabled systems supporting critical medical distribution. You have cost this company millions." His voice rose with each sentence. "You abandoned hospitals, clients, drivers, and employees because you could not emotionally process a promotion decision." Trevor watched me over the top of his coffee cup. The board members remained silent. Malcolm continued. "You have shown an astonishing lack of professional maturity. You have acted recklessly, vindictively, and possibly criminally." I let him speak. Every accusation strengthened the record. "You are not a whistleblower," he said. "You are not a victim. You are a disgruntled former employee who used technical knowledge gained through this organization to hold its infrastructure hostage." One of the attorneys slid a thick packet toward Malcolm. He placed it in front of him. "Fortunately, the company is prepared to resolve this without unnecessary public consequences." He pushed the packet across the table toward me. It stopped near the binder. A silver pen followed. The document's title appeared in bold print: Confidential Settlement, Intellectual Property Assachment, and Release of Claims. Malcolm placed both hands on the table. "You will sign that agreement." I glanced at the first page. It described Kestrel's platform as disputed corporate work product. It required me to transfer all source code, documentation, patents, copyrights, server credentials, and future development rights to Ardent Vale. For no payment. The agreement also required me to accept responsibility for the outage and permanently waive every legal claim against the company. A confidentiality clause prohibited me from discussing the dispute with clients, regulators, journalists, or law enforcement. They wanted my platform, my silence, and my confession. Malcolm continued. After signing, you will connect your laptop to our network and restore full administrative access. His eyes moved toward Trevor. Senior Director Whitaker will assume control of the platform. Trevor nodded as though the transition had already happened. If you cooperate, Malcolm said, Ardent Vale may decline to pursue criminal charges. May? The single word disrupted his rhythm. His nostrils flared. That depends on the speed and completeness of your cooperation. One attorney folded his hands. We are discussing significant potential exposure, Ms. Park. Intentional disruption of medical logistics can carry consequences beyond ordinary civil damages. The threat was carefully phrased. Trevor was less careful. Just sign it, Elena. His voice sounded soft, concerned, almost brotherly. Malcolm is giving you a chance to leave without handcuffs. He leaned forward. Think about Mom and Dad. Think about what Paige will have to explain when your arrest appears online. I looked at him. He returned the gaze without blinking. You do not want federal investigators tearing apart your life, he said. Give the company the software, restore the system, then go home. The attorneys watched my hand. They expected it to move toward the silver pen. Malcolm waited. Trevor smiled again. I placed one palm on the binder, then I lifted it. The attorneys followed the movement with their eyes. I dropped it directly on top of the transfer agreement. The table shook. The silver pen bounced once, rolled over the edge and struck the floor. Nobody moved to retrieve it. I leaned forward with both hands resting on the black cover. Your entire strategy depends on several false assumptions. Malcolm stared at the binder. What is that supposed to mean? You assume Ardent Vale owns Kestrel's platform. It does. You assume ending a private software license qualifies as sabotage. It does. You assume threatening me with arrest gives you the right to seize my company. His expression hardened. And you assume Trevor is the person in this room who needs protection. Trevor's smile disappeared. I opened the binder. The reinforced cover landed flat against the table. Color-coded tabs ran down the side. I removed 4 identical document packets and placed one before each attorney, then another in front of Malcolm. Begin with Exhibit 1. Nobody moved. I waited. The lead attorney finally opened his packet. The others followed. That is Kestrel LogicWorks federal copyright registration, I said. The filing predates Ardent Vale's first use of the platform. Malcolm barely glanced at it. This proves nothing. Exhibit 2 is the company registration. Exhibit 3 contains the archived development history. Every source file is timestamped to private equipment and private servers. The attorneys began reading more carefully. Exhibit 4 is my employment agreement, I continued. My position was Operations Intelligence Analyst. No software development duties, no invention assignment provision. No clause transferring independently created intellectual property. Malcolm turned toward the lead attorney. She worked here when she created it. The attorney did not answer. Tell her, Malcolm demanded. Employees cannot build systems for a company and then claim them personally. I turned several pages. Exhibit 5 is the license your legal department approved. The lead attorney found the section. His eyes moved down the highlighted paragraphs. Ardent Vale received a zero-cost, non-exclusive license, I said. The agreement expressly preserved Kestrel's ownership and allowed termination at the licensor's discretion. The room became quieter. Trevor shifted in his chair. Malcolm pointed toward the documents. This is paperwork she created to cover herself. The lead attorney looked up. No. Malcolm froze. The attorney adjusted the pages. This bears the signature of Ardent Vale's former general counsel. Malcolm stared at him. The attorney continued more slowly. The registration numbers are valid. The licensing language is explicit. Another lawyer had already opened a legal database on his tablet. He entered the copyright identifier, then the corporate registration. He checked both twice. When he raised his head, the confidence had left his face. She owns it, he said. Malcolm's expression went blank. The attorney swallowed. Kestrel LogicWorks owns the platform, the source architecture, and the derivative development rights. He glanced at the transfer agreement beneath my binder. Ardent Vale has no ownership claim. For the first time since I entered the room, Trevor stopped clicking his pen. Malcolm stared at the attorney as though the man had betrayed him personally. That cannot be right. It is right, the attorney said. Malcolm turned to me. His anger remained, but something weaker had appeared beneath it. Fear. You allowed us to use this platform for years. Yes, you integrated it into our operations. Under a signed license. You never told me you could simply turn it off. It was written in the agreement your legal department approved. He looked down at the documents again. The other attorneys were already scanning ahead, searching for anything that might rescue the company. I turned to the section marked Intrashun. The ownership problem is not your largest concern. The lead attorney found the tab. His expression changed before I said another word. What is this? He asked. Connection records from Kestrel's private servers. I pointed to the first page. Those addresses belong to Ardent Vale. One attorney opened his laptop. Another pulled out his phone. I continued. Beginning less than 2 hours after I ended the license, machines inside this company began attempting to access Kestrel's protected administrative gateway. Malcolm frowned. Our technology department was trying to restore essential services. Without permission, they were recovering company infrastructure. You just confirmed it was not company infrastructure. The lead attorney read down the page. These are repeated authentication attempts, thousands of them. He moved to the next exhibit. His face tightened. They escalated to automated credential attacks. Yes. The third attorney looked toward Malcolm. Who authorized this? Malcolm hesitated. That hesitation answered the question. Trevor shifted again. The lead attorney lowered his voice. Malcolm, did you instruct information technology to bypass her security? We were facing an emergency. That is not an answer. We needed access. The attorney pushed his chair back and immediately began typing on his phone. Stop every attempt now. The other lawyers followed. Messages flew across their screens. Calls were placed in hushed voices. One attorney stood and walked toward the corner of the room, speaking urgently to Ardent Vale's chief information officer. Malcolm looked from one lawyer to the next. What are you doing? Preventing additional exposure, the lead attorney said. Exposure to what? I answered. Unqualified access to a privately owned system. Malcolm glared at me. You cannot seriously expect anyone to believe we committed a crime by trying to restart our own operation. You were not restarting your operation. You were attempting to force entry into mine. The lead attorney closed his eyes briefly. This may create federal cyber liability. Malcolm's complexion faded. I continued before he could recover. The attempts also targeted copyrighted source architecture. Kestrel is preserving every log. Trevor finally spoke. This is ridiculous. His voice lacked its earlier confidence. Elena disabled a medical distribution network and now she is accusing the company because people tried to repair it. I looked at him. You told everyone you managed the platform. I did manage it. Then why did you need stolen credentials? His mouth tightened. Malcolm sank into his chair. For several seconds he said nothing. Then his entire posture changed. The hard executive shell softened. His voice lowered. Elena, we can resolve this. I waited. We can purchase Kestrel. No, you have not heard an offer. I am not selling it to you. His eyes moved toward the board members, then back to me. We will compensate you for development, retroactively. No, we will give you the senior director position. Trevor turned toward him. Malcolm, be quiet. The command struck Trevor like a slap. Malcolm leaned toward me. You can have the title, the salary, the entire department. Trevor's appointment can be reversed before the formal announcement reaches the industry. Trevor's face went rigid. You said the decision was final. Malcolm did not look at him. We are discussing the survival of the company. I studied the man who had threatened to blacklist me less than a week earlier. Now he was offering the position as though it had always belonged to him to grant. I do not want it. Malcolm blinked. You wanted that job for years. I wanted recognition for work I had already done. You can have it. No. His voice became desperate. Name a price. I already did. The lawyers looked up. I turned to the final pages of the ownership section. Kestrel Logic Works is filing a $6.4 million civil action against Ardent Vale for unauthorized system intrusion, attempted intellectual property theft, and interference with protected commercial assets. The boardroom erupted. Several directors began speaking at once. Malcolm rose halfway from his chair. You cannot be serious. I am. This company is already losing millions every day. That is not Kestrel's responsibility. You would destroy hundreds of jobs. You built a national operation around software you never owned. His face twisted. We can negotiate. My attorney will handle that. Trevor gripped the arms of his chair. His eyes had moved from me to the binder. He knew the section labeled theft still had not been opened. He understood what came next. Panic sharpened his features. Elena is lying. The room quieted. Malcolm turned toward him. Trevor stood too quickly and struck the table with his thigh. Coffee spilled from his cup. He barely noticed. She planned all of this. His breathing quickened. She created those documents after she left. She built the licensing story because she knew the billing records were about to expose her. I said nothing. Trevor pointed at me. She had complete access to Summit Care's invoices. She controlled the platform. She was the only person who could alter the transactions without triggering alerts. The board members watched him. He mistook their silence for belief, so he pushed harder. She has been stealing through the system for months. Malcolm's face lifted. A desperate spark appeared in his eyes. Trevor saw it. He seized it. She realized I was close to finding the missing funds. That is why she became furious about the promotion. Once I had executive access, I could audit her work. His words came faster. She shut down the platform to hide the evidence. One attorney looked at me. Another looked at the unopened tab in the binder. Trevor moved around the table. She is not suing us because we wronged her. She is demanding $6.4 million to make everyone afraid to investigate. He pointed toward the door. Call the police, do not let her leave. Whispers broke across the room. Malcolm pushed himself upright. Elena, his voice trembled between relief and accusation. Have you been taking money from Summit Care? I held Trevor's gaze. He was sweating now, but a small smile had returned. He believed he had created doubt. He believed doubt would save him. I glanced at the wall clock. 8:14. Almost perfect, Trevor continued. Her laptop should be seized immediately. Her accounts should be frozen. Every Kestrel server needs to be searched before she deletes anything else. I still did not defend myself. That unsettled him. His smile weakened. Then the boardroom doors opened. The sound cut through every whisper. Gabriel Cortez entered first. He was compact, broad through the chest, and dressed in a dark suit without a single unnecessary detail. His silver beard was trimmed close. His expression held none of the panic Malcolm had expected from a client facing a distribution crisis. He looked controlled and furious. Maya Desai walked beside him, carrying her leather litigation case. Malcolm rushed to his feet. Mr. Cortez. He moved around the table with one hand extended. Thank goodness you are here. We have identified the employee responsible, and we are taking immediate action. Gabriel walked past the offered hand. He did not look at Malcolm. He did not acknowledge the attorneys. His eyes went directly to Trevor. The last trace of confidence vanished from my brother-in-law's face. Gabriel stopped several feet from him. Trevor stepped backward. His shoulders struck the glass wall. Nobody in the room spoke. The man Trevor had stolen from had arrived, and he already knew exactly where to look. Gabriel stopped close enough that Trevor had to tilt his head upward. Mr. Whitaker. Trevor pressed himself against the glass. Mr. Cortez, there has been a misunderstanding. Gabriel's expression did not change. You just accused Ms. Park of stealing from my company. Trevor swallowed. I accused her because the records point directly to her platform. Do they? His voice was quiet. That made it worse. Trevor glanced toward Malcolm, but Malcolm looked away. Maya moved past them and approached the multimedia console. She opened her litigation case, removed a tablet, and connected it to the boardroom display. The large screen brightened. A detailed billing ledger appeared. Hundreds of Summit Care transactions filled the image. Maya faced the room. My client did not enter Ardent Vale's network after resigning. She did not corrupt its data, conceal a financial loss, or create the current outage to support an extortion scheme. She tapped the screen. The preserved records show something very different. Several invoice lines turned yellow. These adjustments were embedded inside Summit Care's automated billing cycle. Each deduction was too small to trigger ordinary review. Most appeared as refrigeration balancing, emergency handling, or regional compliance charges. Gabriel watched the numbers. How many? More than 46,000 unauthorized adjustments over 7 months. One board member covered his mouth. Maya changed the display. A timeline appeared beside a rising total. The money accumulated inside a concealed reserve account hosted within Ardent Vale's own financial environment. The total at the bottom read $1,470,000. Malcolm stared at it. No, Maya looked toward him. That figure has been independently verified. There has to be another explanation. There is. She changed the screen again. A map of transfers appeared. Money flowed from the internal reserve through 2 shell companies, then toward a numbered account in the British Virgin Islands. Gabriel's face became still, not surprised, not confused, simply cold. Trevor pushed away from the wall. This is fabricated. Maya did not look at him. The final wire required Tier 6 authorization. Until last week, Mr. Whitaker lacked that privilege. The next slide showed the approval attached to his new position, Senior Director of Network Intelligence. Tier 6 enabled. The room absorbed the meaning. I looked at Trevor. The promotion had been celebrated as recognition of leadership. On the screen, it looked like what it truly was. Access. Maya tapped again. A digital authorization request appeared with a date, time, terminal number, and user certificate. This is the attempted release of the reserve account. The username was highlighted, Trevor Whitaker. His unique security signature appeared beneath it. Trevor shook his head. Someone copied my credentials. Maya advanced to another page. Multi-factor authentication was completed through your registered phone. My phone was compromised. The request also came from your assigned office terminal. Then Elena remote accessed it. I said nothing. Maya opened the next record. Building security logged your badge entering the executive floor 11 minutes before the transaction. Trevor's breathing accelerated. I work here, of course my badge was used. And the camera outside your office recorded you entering alone. Every excuse closed before he could escape through it. Maya let the evidence remain on the screen. Trevor looked around the table. Nobody met his eyes. Finally, he pointed at me. She designed the system. She could make the logs say anything. Maya nodded once. We anticipated that claim. The screen changed. A chain of custody report appeared beside cryptographic verification records. The logs were copied automatically to 3 independent archive locations before Ms. Park resigned. Each copy has an identical digital hash. Changing one record would invalidate all 3. Trevor stared at the display. Maya continued. Summit Care's auditors received a sealed copy yesterday. Ardent Vale's outside data storage vendor confirmed another this morning. The lead corporate attorney lowered his head. There was no path left, but Maya was not finished. The theft was only the first part. Trevor's eyes snapped toward her. She opened the section labeled Planned Cover-Up. The display filled with a sequence of commands written for the Kestrel billing module. Malcolm leaned forward. What am I looking at? A dormant corruption package, Maya said. It was created under Mr. Whitaker's account and scheduled to run after the offshore transfer. She highlighted several lines. The package would duplicate invoice entries, detach shipment records from billing references, and damage the audit trail across Summit Care's account. Gabriel looked at Trevor. You planned to destroy my records. No, Trevor's voice cracked. That code was a diagnostic test. It was designed to make the theft appear to be a system-wide accounting failure, Maya said. She turned toward me. And because Elena Park was the platform's creator, she would have become the immediate target of the investigation. The room blurred at the edges for a moment. I already knew the plan. Still, hearing it described in front of everyone made the betrayal feel newly real. Trevor had expected me to train him, support him, remain available, then accept the blame when he detonated the system around us. Gabriel stepped closer to him. Were you going to accuse her exactly as you did 5 minutes ago? Trevor's mouth moved. Nothing emerged. Gabriel waited. Trevor looked at me. His face no longer held anger, only calculation. Elena, he said my name gently, the same tone he had used whenever he wanted me to rescue him. You know I would never do that to you. I met his eyes. You already did. No, listen to me. He came away from the wall. This got out of control. The reserve account was temporary. I was testing whether the billing system could detect micro-adjustments. Gabriel's expression hardened. With my money? I intended to return everything. To an offshore account? Trevor flinched. That destination was not mine. Maya changed the display one final time. A banking application appeared. The beneficial owner of the receiving company was listed through a chain of registrations. At the end was one name, Trevor Daniel Whitaker. His knees seemed to weaken. He gripped the back of a chair. Malcolm stared at him. You told me the promotion was necessary because Elena was blocking client innovation. Trevor said nothing. You said she was unstable. Still nothing. You said you had been managing the platform for over a year. Trevor looked toward the door. 2 corporate security officers had moved into position outside. Maya disconnected her tablet. The evidence has already been delivered to Summit Care's legal department and the appropriate authorities. Trevor's head turned sharply. What authorities? Gabriel answered. The ones who investigate theft from national healthcare networks. Trevor's face collapsed. He looked at me again. Elena, please. It was the first honest word I had ever heard from him. Not because he regretted the crime. Because he finally understood the consequences belonged to him. He crossed the room and stopped in front of me. We can fix this. No, think about Paige. I felt nothing. She is pregnant. I know. She cannot lose the house. That is not my decision. His voice dropped to a whisper. Tell them the records are wrong. I looked at the expensive pen still clutched in his hand. The gift I had bought when I helped him get hired. He followed my gaze. Then his fingers opened. The pen fell onto the boardroom floor. It struck the wood once and rolled beneath the table. Trevor lowered himself in front of me, not gracefully. His knees hit the carpet. The man my family called a provider looked up at me from the floor. Please save me. Behind him, the boardroom doors opened again. This time, 2 federal agents entered. The agents entered without urgency. They did not need it. One was a woman in a navy suit with a badge clipped beside her waist. The other wore a gray jacket and carried a slim evidence bag. Trevor remained on his knees. For one suspended second, nobody moved. Then the female agent spoke. Trevor Daniel Whitaker? He rose unsteadily. There has been a mistake. Stand and place your hands where we can see them. Trevor looked at Malcolm. Tell them. Malcolm stepped backward. Trevor's face twisted. You approved my access. Malcolm said nothing. You told information technology to help me restore the billing connection. The corporate attorney stopped writing. The female agent repeated her instruction. Hands where we can see them, Mr. Whitaker. Trevor lifted them slowly. His new suit pulled tight across his shoulders. The second agent moved behind him and secured his wrists. The click of the handcuff sounded smaller than I expected. Trevor turned toward me. Elena, I held his gaze. Call Paige. No. She is going to hear this from someone else. She will hear the truth. His expression hardened. You planned this. I preserved evidence. You called them. Summit Care did. That answer hurt him more. He looked toward Gabriel. You are destroying an innocent family. Gabriel's eyes remained cold. You stole from pharmacies supplying cancer patients, trauma centers, and rural hospitals. I never delayed medication. You built your theft inside the system responsible for delivering it. Trevor opened his mouth. Gabriel did not let him speak. You risked every shipment moving through that network because you believed nobody would question a man wearing an expensive suit. The agents guided Trevor toward the door. He resisted just enough to slow them. Malcolm knew there were billing adjustments. Malcolm's head snapped up. What? I sent you reports. You sent me performance summaries. You signed the access elevation. That was for network management. Trevor laughed once. It sounded broken. You did not care what it was for. You wanted Elena gone. The board members turned toward Malcolm. He looked suddenly older. Trevor continued as the agents pulled him forward. You wanted someone who praised you, someone who played golf, someone who made you feel important. Stop talking, Malcolm said. You gave me everything I asked for. I did not authorize theft. You never asked what I was doing. The agents led Trevor through the glass doors. He looked back once, not at Paige. Not at Malcolm, at me. The expression on his face was not remorse. It was disbelief. He still could not understand why I had refused to save him. Then the doors closed. The boardroom remained silent. Trevor's coffee had spread across the table, soaking the edge of Malcolm's unsigned transfer agreement. The paper curled beneath the stain. Gabriel turned toward the executives. For 4 years, Summit Care entrusted Ardent Vale with the movement of temperature-sensitive medication across 11 states. His voice was controlled. Every person in the room listened. We trusted your refrigeration controls, your emergency response systems, your financial oversight. He looked toward the display showing Trevor's offshore transfer. This morning, I discovered your most important operational platform belongs to a private company you never bothered to value. Malcolm tried to speak. Gabriel raised one hand. I also discovered that your newly appointed senior director was stealing from our accounts while preparing to blame the software's actual owner. We were deceived, Malcolm said. Gabriel looked at him. You were careless. Trevor manipulated the reports. You promoted him without confirming whether he understood the department he would lead. Malcolm gripped the back of his chair. We can correct that decision. You threatened the qualified person with prison. We were operating with incomplete information. You chose not to obtain complete information. Malcolm's face reddened. Mr. Cortez, I understand your anger, but terminating services now would endanger medical deliveries. Gabriel turned toward me. Ms. Park, can Kestrel support Summit Care directly? Every eye shifted to me. Yes, Malcolm went still. I continued. Kestrel can establish isolated gateways for Summit Care's regional hubs. Your data would remain separate from Ardent Vale's environment. How quickly? A limited emergency network within hours. Full migration after security verification. Gabriel nodded. Then medication delivery will continue. Malcolm stepped toward him. You cannot remove our largest account based on one employee's misconduct. Gabriel faced him. This was not one employee's misconduct. He pointed toward the abandoned transfer agreement. You attempted to force the owner of essential technology to surrender it under threat of arrest. Then he indicated the intrusion records. You authorized attacks against her private servers. Finally, he looked toward the offshore transfer still displayed on the wall. And your oversight allowed nearly $1.5 million to be diverted from my company. He buttoned his jacket. Summit Care is terminating its distribution contract with Ardent Vale effective immediately. A board member stood. Mr. Cortez, please. Gabriel did not look at him. Our legal team will deliver formal notice today. We will also pursue recovery of every unauthorized charge, every emergency cost created by this outage, and every loss connected to your security failures. Malcolm's voice dropped. You will bankrupt us. Gabriel regarded him without sympathy. You did that before I entered the room. He turned toward me. Mrs. Park, my office will contact Kestrel within the hour. Then he gave Maya a brief nod and walked out. The door closed behind him. The loss of Summit Care moved through the boardroom like a physical shock. One director sat with both hands covering his mouth. Another stared at the financial display. Malcolm remained standing near the head of the table, but the authority had gone out of him. The board chair rose slowly. She was a woman in her late 60s named Ruth Calder, known for speaking rarely and remembering everything. She looked at Malcolm. Did you bypass human resources to appoint Trevor Whitaker? Malcolm loosened his tie. The position required immediate action. Did you review his technical qualifications? He had strong client relationships. That was not my question. Malcolm glanced toward the attorneys. None helped him. Ruth continued. Did you know Ardent Vale did not own Kestrel Pulse? I believed the platform was internal. Did you read the license? My legal team handled. Did you read it? No, the word barely carried. Ruth looked at the intrusion records. Did you approve efforts to force access into Kestrel's servers? We were facing a catastrophic outage. So that is yes. Malcolm lowered himself into his chair. Ruth's voice remained calm. You drove away the person who designed our operational intelligence. You promoted an unqualified thief. You exposed this company to criminal investigation, client litigation, and an intellectual property action. She closed the packet before her. Your employment is terminated immediately. Malcolm stared up at her. You cannot do that in the middle of a crisis. I just did. We can restructure. I can contact investors. You will contact nobody on behalf of this company. Ruth signaled toward the security officers waiting outside. They will escort you to your office. You may collect personal belongings under supervision. Malcolm looked at me. The man who had promised to make my name radioactive now seemed to expect mercy from it. Elena. I said nothing. You know how much I built here. I looked at the ruined agreement beneath the coffee stain. So do I. Security entered. Malcolm stood without resistance. As they led him away, he kept his eyes on the floor. Maya waited until the doors closed. Then she approached the remaining attorneys and placed one business card at the center of the table. Kestrel Logic Works will proceed with its $6.4 million claim for attempted intellectual property theft, unauthorized access, and commercial interference. The lead attorney looked exhausted. Is your client open to settlement? Maya glanced at me. Yes, I said, through counsel. She returned her attention to them. You have 24 hours to preserve every relevant record and contact my office. Any deletion, alteration, or continued access attempt will be added to the filing. I closed the binder. The metal ring snapped into place. Then I lifted it from the table. Nobody threatened me. Nobody ordered me to sit. Nobody mentioned family. I walked through the glass doors and into the executive corridor. Behind me, Ardent Vale's board began arguing over the remains of the company. Ahead of me, the elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. For the second time in 1 week, I watched that office disappear behind closing metal. The The first time, I had left with a cardboard box. This time, I left with my name, my company, and my future intact. By noon, the story had escaped the building. A Denver business journal reported that Ardent Vale had suspended a newly promoted executive during a federal fraud investigation. 2 hours later, another outlet confirmed Malcolm's termination. By evening, reporters were waiting outside the headquarters. I did not speak to them. Maya instructed me to make no public statement while the investigation remained active. Kestrel's ownership records and server logs would speak through legal channels. That was enough for me. I spent the afternoon working with Gabriel's technical team. Summit Care's most urgent medication routes moved onto isolated Kestrel gateways first. Insulin, oncology drugs, emergency surgical supplies, vaccines with narrow temperature limits. Within 5 hours, the highest priority shipments were visible again. By midnight, every critical hospital order had an active route. Nobody at Summit Care asked me to surrender ownership. Nobody demanded free access. Gabriel signed a temporary emergency license at a commercial rate before the first gateway came online. That one signature made the difference clear. Ardent Vale had treated my work like an entitlement. Summit Care treated it like a valuable service. The next morning, Maya sent me a brief message. Trevor had been charged with wire fraud, attempted embezzlement, and conspiracy to manipulate protected financial records. His bond hearing was scheduled for later that week. I read the message once, then I returned to work. I did not call Paige. I did not call my parents. They found other ways to reach me. Blocked calls did not disappear completely. They moved into a filtered folder where the phone stored them without ringing. By noon, that folder contained 23 voicemails. Paige left the first. Her voice shook so badly that I barely recognized it. "Elena, call me. Trevor's attorney needs money immediately. They are saying the retainer is $75,000. She paused to breathe. "I tried our savings account. Something is wrong. Everything is gone." The second voicemail arrived 12 minutes later. She was crying harder. "Our checking account is empty too. The bank froze our credit cards. I cannot reach Trevor. I do not know what is happening." By the third message, fear had turned into accusation. "You knew about this. You knew our money was gone, and you let me find out alone." I did not respond. The truth was that I had not known. Trevor's theft from Summit Care was only one part of his financial life. Federal investigators discovered the rest quickly. He had drained the couple's savings months earlier. The account Paige believed held their house reserve contained less than $40. The small investment fund they had opened for their unborn child had been liquidated. Their credit cards were near their limits. Trevor had also borrowed from private lenders to maintain the image of an executive lifestyle his real income could not support. Tailored suits, country club dues, luxury dinners, weekend trips, the limited edition watch he displayed at every family event. Most of it had been financed with debt. Some of it had been paid for with money taken from Paige. The provider my family worshipped had not been providing anything. He had been consuming them. Paige's fourth voicemail came that evening. Her voice was quieter. "Mom and Dad said they will help with the lawyer." A pause followed. But the bank called about the house. The 4-bedroom property in Highlands Ranch had not closed yet. Trevor and Paige had placed a large deposit on the construction contract and signed financing documents based on his projected senior director income. That income no longer existed. Neither did the deposit. Investigators traced part of it to falsified earnings statements, and money moved through one of Trevor's shell entities. The lender suspended the mortgage immediately. The builder issued a default notice. The flooring Paige had selected would eventually belong to someone else. The oversized kitchen, the nursery with mountain decals, the backyard she had already shown online as though she owned it. All of it disappeared before she ever received the keys. My parents had more at risk than Paige realized. Gordon and Diane had quietly guaranteed part of the mortgage. They had not mentioned that during the visit to my loft. Gordon used his insurance agency income, investment portfolio, and home equity to strengthen the application. Trevor supplied altered tax records and inflated compensation statements. My father signed anyway. He had been so eager to prove that Trevor was successful that he never verified the numbers. When federal investigators arrived at my parents' house, they carried copies of every document. Diane described the visit in a voicemail that lasted almost 7 minutes. "Elena, 2 agents came into our home. Her voice moved between panic and outrage. They spread private financial papers across our coffee table as though we were criminals. I stood at my kitchen island, listening without expression. They said Trevor falsified information. Your father did not know. We did not understand what we were signing. That was not entirely true. Gordon understood that he was guaranteeing debt. He simply believed consequences belonged to other people. Diane continued. They are reviewing our accounts. They have restricted access to part of our investment portfolio. Your father cannot move money from the retirement fund. Her breathing became uneven. We may lose the house. For decades, that house had represented everything my parents valued. Status, control, proof that their choices were superior to everyone else's. Diane hosted charity committees in its formal dining room. Gordon entertained clients beside the stone fireplace. Family photographs lined the hallway, arranged so Paige appeared in nearly every frame. Now their equity was tied to a fraudulent mortgage guarantee. The bank froze several accounts while investigators determined which assets had been exposed. Gordon's next voicemail was shorter. Elena, this has gone too far. His voice still tried to command me, but fear weakened every word. You need to speak with the prosecutor. Explain that Trevor made a mistake under pressure. Tell them the company's software created confusion. Even now, he wanted the platform blamed. Even now, he wanted me to make the lie believable. The family could lose everything, he said. Then he added the sentence he had used my entire life. You have a responsibility to help. I deleted the message. Diane called again, then Paige, then Gordon from a number belonging to his office. When I did not answer, Paige used a friend's phone. I picked up without recognizing the number. Elena. The moment I heard her voice, I nearly ended the call. Please do not hang up. I remained silent. She cried softly. Not theatrically this time. There was no audience, no mother beside her, no Trevor wrapping an arm around her while accusing me of cruelty. I have nowhere to go, she said. The house is gone. The accounts are empty. The attorney says Trevor could be in prison for years. I looked through the loft windows at the evening traffic below. What are you asking me for? I need money. At least she was finally honest. How much? The defense attorney wants $75,000 to begin. Then there are the mortgage penalties. Mom and Dad's accounts are restricted, so they cannot cover everything. Everything? Her voice tightened. Do not make me list it like I am begging. You called me. She breathed in sharply. You have the lawsuit. You have that company now. You can afford to help. There it was. My success had already become family property again. You want me to finance Trevor's defense. He is my husband. He tried to frame me for his crime. He was scared. He planned it for months. He is the father of my child. And I was supposed to be the person who went to prison instead. Paige stopped crying. For several seconds I heard only her breathing, then her voice became cold. You have always wanted this. Wanted what? To see me lose everything. I closed my eyes. Even with Trevor in federal custody, she still needed me to be the villain. It was the only story that allowed her to remain innocent. I did not empty your accounts, I said. I did not falsify your mortgage documents. I did not steal from Summit Care, and I did not build your life around lies. You could still fix it. No, Mom was right about you. Then ask Mom. I ended the call. The number rang again immediately. I blocked it. That night, 12 more messages entered the filtered folder. They begged, threatened, accused. Gordon said my refusal would kill Diane. Diane said Paige's baby would suffer because of me. Paige said Trevor might harm himself in custody. Every message offered a different reason why their consequences belonged in my hands. I listened to none of them twice. At midnight, I deleted the entire folder. Then I turned off voicemail forwarding for unknown numbers. The loft became quiet again. Not the fragile quiet that existed before someone made another demand. A deeper quiet, protected, permanent. For the first time in my life, my family was facing a crisis I had not been assigned to repair, and I intended to keep it that way. 3 days later, Maya called with Ardent Vale's first settlement proposal. It was insulting. The company offered $900,000 in exchange for a complete release of claims, permanent confidentiality, and limited access to selected Kestrel tools while it transitioned away from my platform. I rejected it before Maya finished reading. They are testing whether you need cash, she said. I do not. I know. She sounded almost pleased. Then we let them feel the pressure. Ardent Vale's remaining clients were already leaving. Without Kestrel Pulse, the company had returned to an outdated collection of disconnected scheduling programs. Refrigeration alerts arrived after damage occurred. Hospital priorities had to be entered by hand. Dispatchers printed spreadsheets because several internal dashboards no longer worked. The board hired outside consultants. The consultants needed months. Ardent Vale had days. Summit Care's legal team filed claims for the missing funds. Emergency transportation costs and security failures. Federal investigators seized Trevor's office computer. The state opened a separate inquiry into whether Ardent Vale had endangered regulated medical shipments through inadequate oversight. Every hour the company delayed settlement, its position became weaker. 4 days after the first offer, Maya called again. 3.8 million. No, they removed the confidentiality demand. Still no. Good. A week later, the board requested mediation. This time, they did not describe me as a disgruntled employee. They addressed me as the Chief Executive Officer of Kestrel Logic Works. The mediation lasted 9 hours. Ardent Vale's representatives arrived with 5 attorneys and 2 insurance specialists. Malcolm was absent. The board chair, Ruth Calder, attended by video and apologized for the company's conduct without trying to excuse it. Maya presented the intrusion logs. Then Malcolm's email threatening federal prosecution unless I surrendered the platform. Then the unsigned transfer agreement. The insurance specialist requested a private recess. When they returned, the numbers changed. Ardent Vale agreed to pay Kestrel $4,800,000. Its cyber liability insurer contributed another $1,600,000. The combined settlement matched our claim, $6.4 million. Kestrel retained every ownership right. Ardent Vale received no future access. The company admitted that its employees had attempted unauthorized entry into Kestrel's servers and agreed to preserve all evidence connected to Trevor and Malcolm. There was no apology to me in the final agreement. I did not need one. Their signatures were more useful. When the settlement funds cleared, I stared at the account balance for several minutes. 3 weeks earlier, Kestrel Logic Works had existed mostly as a legal structure around my software. Now it had capital, a paying national client, a protected product, and no employer standing above it. Gabriel requested a formal meeting the next morning. He arrived at Maya's office with Summit Care's general counsel and chief technology officer. The contract they placed before me was not charity. It was larger than anything I had imagined signing so soon. Summit Care offered a 3-year enterprise license for Kestrel Pulse, with implementation fees, annual maintenance, and separate compensation for every new regional integration. The agreement also included investment capital for expansion. Gabriel would receive a minority, non-controlling stake in Kestrel Logic Works. I would retain operational control. Source ownership would remain entirely mine. "We are not buying your company," he said. "We are investing in the person who understood our risk better than the corporation we hired." I read every page. Maya read them again, then I signed. For the first time, someone paid the true value of what I had built. Not because I begged, not because I sacrificed, because the work mattered. Within 2 weeks, Kestrel occupied an office suite on the 39th floor of a tower in downtown Denver. The space was temporary. 1 conference room, 6 enclosed offices, an open area large enough for 20 engineers, windows facing west toward the mountains. I hired carefully. A cybersecurity architect from a hospital network, 2 cold chain specialists, a data engineer who had left Ardent Vale after Malcolm blamed her for a failure Trevor caused. 3 software developers who asked better questions in their interviews than Trevor had asked during 18 months at the company. Nobody received a title they could not support. Nobody was expected to work invisibly so someone else could shine. On our first morning, I stood before the small team with a cup of coffee in my hand. "I do not care who speaks the loudest," I told them. "I care who understands the problem." Several people smiled, I continued. "Credit follows contribution here. Mistakes are documented, not hidden. Nobody is required to rescue a colleague who refuses to learn." That last sentence carried more history than they knew. By the end of the week, Kestrel had restored stable routing across Summit Care's 43 hubs. Within 10 days, medication spoilage had fallen below its pre-outage level. Gabriel sent no celebration, only a brief email. "This is what competent operations looks like." I saved it, not because I needed praise, because the sentence was true. The office became busier each day. New clients called after reading about Ardent Vale's collapse. Hospital groups requested demonstrations. A vaccine manufacturer asked whether Kestrel could monitor international air transfers. For years, I had believed my value depended on how many disasters I could quietly prevent for other people. Now every solution strengthened something that belonged to me. I began sleeping 7 hours most nights. I ran before sunrise. I bought fresh flowers for the office reception desk every Monday. Small choices, ordinary choices, mine. I thought the family crisis had finally moved beyond my walls. Then one Thursday afternoon, my desk phone chimed. My executive assistant, Nora, spoke through the intercom. Her voice was controlled but tense. "Elena, we have a security issue." I looked away from the architecture plan on my monitor. What happened? 3 people entered behind a catering delivery on the lobby level. They refused to check in and came directly upstairs. I already knew. "They are in reception," Nora continued. "They say they are your parents and sister." I glanced through the glass wall of my office. 2 members of building security had appeared near the elevators. Paige's voice carried from the reception area. "You cannot keep me from my own sister." Diane said something louder. Then Gordon demanded to speak with the person in charge. I leaned back in my chair. They had found my company. Of course they had. People who ignored boundaries rarely accepted them after one refusal. They simply searched for another door. "Should security remove them?" Nora asked. I considered it. Then I looked around my office. The space was bright and quiet. A Kestrel logo hung on the wall behind my desk. The settlement documents were secured in a locked cabinet. Through the windows, the city stretched beneath me. This was not my parents' house, not Ardent Vale, not a family dinner where I had been trained to surrender. This was my company. "Send them in," I said. Nora hesitated. "All 3? "Yes." I stood and buttoned my jacket. "Keep security outside the door." Less than a minute later, Diane entered first. She looked smaller than she had at my loft. Her platinum hair was unstyled. The pearls were gone. Her pale cardigan hung loosely from her shoulders. Gordon followed. He had lost the polished certainty he carried at the country club. His face looked gray. His golf jacket had been replaced by a wrinkled windbreaker. Paige came last. Her pregnancy was further along now. She wore a loose black dress and no makeup. The cream handbag had disappeared. They stopped inside the office. For several seconds, none of them spoke. Diane looked around at the windows, the conference table, and the Kestrel logo. Something painful moved across her face. Not pride, recognition. She was finally seeing the scale of what she had demanded I give away. Gordon closed the door behind them. "Elena," he said, "we need to talk as a family." I remained standing behind my desk. "No." His expression tightened. "We did not come here to argue. Then state what you want." Paige stepped forward. "We need your help." Paige moved closer to my desk. "Trevor's attorney says the federal case is getting worse." I waited. "He needs a serious defense team. The public defender cannot handle something this complicated." "How much?" Her eyes flicked toward Gordon. $100,000 to start. Diane clasped both hands in front of her. "We are not asking you to pay for everything." That was exactly what they were asking. "My accounts are still under review," Gordon said. "The bank has restricted the retirement portfolio, and the insurance agency is losing clients because of the publicity." He looked around my office again. "You clearly have resources now." I let the sentence settle. 3 weeks earlier, he had ordered me to surrender my laptop. Now he stood inside the company that laptop had created, deciding what I could afford to give him. Paige rested one hand beneath her stomach. "The baby will be here so soon. I have medical bills. The builder kept most of our deposit. Trevor's cards are frozen," she swallowed. "I cannot do this alone." "You are not alone," I said. "You have Mom and Dad." Diane's face tightened. "Do not be cruel. I am being accurate." She stepped forward. "The investigators have treated us like accomplices. Your father could lose the agency. We may have to sell the house before the bank forces us to." Her eyes filled with tears. "We spent our lives building that home. You pledged it against Trevor's mortgage. We trusted him. You trusted what he represented." Diane shook her head. "That is not fair. You trusted a title, a suit, and a salary he had not earned. You never asked whether the numbers were real." Gordon's voice hardened. "We did not come here for a lecture. No, you came for money." His mouth closed. Paige leaned over the desk. "There is something else." I looked at her. Ardent Vale's attorneys contacted Trevor's defense team. They think the company's collapse makes the federal case look worse. What do they want? They said if Kestrel modified the settlement terms, Ardent Vale might avoid bankruptcy. The settlement is signed. You could return part of the money. I stared at her. She rushed ahead before I could answer. If Ardent Vale survives, the company might cooperate with Trevor. They could describe the billing issue as an internal control failure instead of intentional theft. Maya had warned me they might try this. Not through legal channels, through family. You want me to give Ardent Vale back millions of dollars so its lawyers can soften Trevor's crimes. Paige's lips trembled. I want my child to have a father. Trevor intended to make sure I spent years in prison. He was desperate. He created shell companies. He made mistakes. He wrote code to corrupt financial records. He never ran it, because I stopped him. Diane began crying. Elena, please. Her voice carried the same fragile sweetness she had used in my loft, but without the pearls and perfect hair, the performance looked tired. We know things were said. We know you felt overlooked. Overlooked? We handled the promotion badly. You tried to hand my company to a thief. We did not know. You knew he could not do the job. Diane shook her head quickly. No. You knew I prepared his reports. We thought you were helping family. You knew he depended on me. That does not mean we knew he was stealing, no. It means you believed his dependence was my obligation. Gordon stepped between us. That is enough. The old command returned to his voice. It sounded strange inside my office. You will not speak to your mother that way when she is begging you to help. I looked at him. You broke into a secured workplace after I blocked your calls. We followed a delivery team because your receptionist refused to let us upstairs. She followed company policy. You forced us to do this. No. You decided my boundaries did not apply to you. Paige began to cry. This is not about boundaries. My husband is in jail because he committed crimes. You keep saying that like you are happy. I am relieved I am not the person he framed. Her tears stopped. The anger beneath them surfaced. You think this office makes you better than us? No. I moved around the desk. It makes me independent of you. Diane wiped her face. We are still your family. You remember that only when you need access to something I own. That is not true. When I needed support, you told me Paige had greater needs. Elena, when I earned a promotion, you told me Trevor deserved the income. Diane's mouth tightened. When Trevor threatened me, you defended him. Gordon raised one hand. We made decisions based on the information we had. You ignored every fact that did not support the life you wanted for Paige. We were protecting our daughter. You have 2 daughters. The words left the room silent. Diane looked away first. I had waited years for someone in my family to deny that difference. None of them ever could. Paige placed both hands on her stomach. So this is revenge. No. I looked at her. Revenge would mean building my life around your suffering. I have not done that. Then help us. I am not funding Trevor's defense. Her face twisted. I am not paying your debts. I am not changing Kestrel's settlement. And I am not contacting prosecutors to minimize what he did. Diane covered her mouth. Gordon stared at me as though I had spoken in another language. You would let your parents lose their home? You placed the home at risk. You could prevent it. I could also buy Paige another car. That would not make it my responsibility. His face reddened. We raised you. You reminded me of that every time you wanted repayment. He took a step closer. After everything we sacrificed, stop. The word cut through him. I held his gaze. You did not come here to apologize. You came because every other source of money disappeared. Gordon's shoulders fell slightly. I continued. You want me to become the emergency account you kept in reserve. The daughter whose work mattered only when it could protect someone you valued more. That is not what this is. It is exactly what this is. Diane reached toward me. I stepped back before she could touch me. She lowered her hand. What are we supposed to do? For the first time, solve your own problem. Paige made a sharp, angry sound. You are heartless. No. I finally stopped confusing love with financial surrender. I touched the security control beneath my desk. The office door opened. 2 guards entered first. 2 more waited outside. Diane turned toward them. Elena, no. I looked at the head of security. Escort them from the building. Cancel their visitor access permanently. Gordon's face went white. You are having your parents removed. They entered without authorization. We came to ask for help. You received my answer. Paige pointed at me. When my baby asks why she has no father, I will tell her what you did. Tell her the truth. Her mouth opened. Tell her he stole from hospitals, tried to destroy evidence, and chose me as the person who would take the blame. The guard moved beside her. Paige pulled away. Then walk, I said. Diane began sobbing. Gordon looked at me one final time. You will regret this when you are alone. I thought about my team outside, Maya, Gabriel. The people who respected my work without demanding ownership of it. Then I thought about the silence in my loft. I was alone when I belonged to this family, I said. Now I am free. Security guided them into the hallway. Paige shouted until the elevator doors closed. Diane cried. Gordon said nothing. I remained by my desk until the noise disappeared. Then I closed the office door. Outside the windows, afternoon light stretched across Denver. My monitor still displayed the architecture plan I had been reviewing before they arrived. A new international cold chain module, a real problem, a future worth my attention. I sat down, picked up my pen, and returned to work. 1 year later, that final confrontation felt less like the end of my family and more like the beginning of my life. 1 year later, I stood beside the windows of Kestrel's new headquarters and watched morning light move across the mountains. We no longer occupied one temporary suite. Kestrel Logic Works now filled 2 complete floors of the building. 48 engineers, analysts, and cold chain specialists worked beneath our name. The reception area displayed no portraits of executives, no polished slogans about loyalty. Only a live map showing temperature-controlled medical shipments moving safely across North America. Every point of light represented something real. Insulin reaching a rural clinic. Chemotherapy drugs arriving before a treatment appointment. Vaccines crossing a summer heat corridor without losing stability. The platform I had once hidden inside my workload had become the center of a growing company. Summit Care remained our largest client, but it was no longer our only one. 3 regional hospital networks had licensed Kestrel Pulse. A national vaccine manufacturer used our monitoring architecture for airport transfers. 2 Canadian distributors were preparing international pilots. We had also begun testing a new system that could predict refrigeration failures before temperature readings moved outside safe limits. The work was demanding, but it was mine. My title was Chief Executive Officer. Not because someone granted it during a board meeting, because I had built the company beneath it. The $6.4 million settlement from Ardent Vale became our expansion fund. I used part of it to secure stronger infrastructure and independent security audits. Another portion funded salaries for the first year, allowing me to hire people without depending on investor approval for every decision. I kept the rest in reserve. For the first time in my life, preparation did not mean waiting for someone to betray me. It meant creating room to grow. Ardent Vale did not recover. Losing Summit Care triggered a series of client departures. Its lenders tightened credit. Insurance carriers refused to cover several claims connected to the intrusion attempts and medical distribution failures. 6 months after the boardroom confrontation, the company filed for restructuring. The restructuring failed. Its remaining hubs and vehicles were sold to competitors. The glass headquarters where Malcolm had threatened to end my career was eventually placed on the market. A different healthcare company leased 3 floors. The Ardent Vale name disappeared from the building. Malcolm attempted to defend himself publicly. He gave one interview to a trade publication and described the collapse as the result of an unforeseeable technology dispute. The article included copies of his email threatening me with prosecution unless I transferred Kestrel's ownership. He never gave another interview. His executive license with a professional logistics association was revoked after an ethics investigation. The industry contacts he once threatened to use against me stopped returning his calls. Last I heard, he was consulting for a small warehouse operator in another state. I did not celebrate that. I simply appreciated the accuracy. Trevor's case ended 9 months after his arrest. The evidence left little room for trial strategy. His attorney challenged the server logs. The court-appointed forensic examiner confirmed them. He claimed the offshore company had been created for legitimate consulting work. Bank records showed no legitimate clients. He claimed the corruption package was a simulation. Its deployment schedule was tied directly to the attempted transfer. Eventually, Trevor pleaded guilty to wire fraud, attempted embezzlement, and falsification of protected financial records. The judge sentenced him to 84 months in federal prison, 7 years. He entered the courtroom wearing a dark suit his attorney had arranged for him. According to Maya, he spent most of the hearings staring at the table. The limited edition watch was gone. So was the Pelican pen. The government seized several luxury purchases as proceeds connected to fraud. Trevor requested that I submit a statement supporting a reduced sentence. I declined. I did not submit a statement asking for punishment either. His own records were enough. Paige gave birth to a daughter in November. I learned that through Maya because the child's name appeared in a financial filing connected to Paige's bankruptcy. I did not visit the hospital. I did not send flowers. That decision hurt more than I expected. The baby had done nothing wrong. But contact with the child would have reopened a door Paige had used against me before the baby was even born. I could care about an innocent child without allowing her mother to use that care as a chain. Paige moved into a 2-bedroom apartment south of Denver after the Highlands Ranch contract collapsed. She sold most of Trevor's remaining luxury items to cover legal and medical expenses. The online lifestyle account she had built around the new house vanished. For several months, she posted messages about betrayal, abandoned women, and relatives who choose money over blood. She never mentioned the stolen $1.47 million. She never mentioned the plan to frame me. Eventually, the posts stopped. Diane and Gordon sold their house. The sale did not produce the rescue they expected. A large portion of the equity went toward legal fees, mortgage penalties, and debts connected to Gordon's guarantees. His insurance agency survived, but several commercial clients left after the investigation became public. He closed the downtown office and began working from a rented space outside the city. My parents moved into a modest duplex, no stone fireplace, no formal dining room. No country club dinners where Diane could introduce Trevor as the brilliant executive of the family. Maya provided those updates only when they affected Kestrel's legal position. I never asked for additional details. I did not search their names. I did not drive past their new homes. I did not need to witness their discomfort to validate my freedom. Revenge would have required continued attention. I wanted distance. The hardest adjustment was not running a company. It was learning what to do with peace. For years, silence had felt temporary. A pause before the next emergency. A warning that someone was preparing another demand. Even after my family stopped reaching me, I sometimes woke at night expecting my phone to vibrate. It never did. The company had strict emergency protocols. No executive could call an employee at midnight simply because they had failed to plan during business hours. I built those rules for the team. Then I realized I needed them too. I began taking Sundays completely off. At first I spent them checking whether anyone needed me. Later I spent them hiking, reading, cooking meals that took longer than 20 minutes, sitting in my loft without feeling guilty for being unproductive. I hired a therapist who never once used the word reconciliation as though it were automatically virtuous. She helped me understand that grief and regret were not the same thing. I grieved the family I should have had. That did not mean I regretted leaving the family I actually had. One morning, I opened the small cardboard box I had carried from Ardent Vale. The mug was still inside. So was the ergonomic mouse and a framed photograph from a company picnic. In the picture, Trevor stood beside me with one arm over my shoulder. He wore the smile that had fooled everyone, including me. I removed the photograph from the frame, then I shredded it. I kept the frame. Some things could be reclaimed after the image inside them was gone. A few months later, Kestrel held its first annual meeting. Not in a luxury hotel, not in a room designed to impress investors. We gathered inside our own largest conference space, surrounded by whiteboards covered in diagrams, shipment maps, and unfinished ideas. Every department presented its work. Engineers explained what they had built. Analysts showed where their forecasts had failed and what they had learned. Operations specialists described hospital problems the software still did not understand. Nobody hid mistakes behind polished language. Nobody took credit from the person sitting beside them. At the end of the meeting, Nora handed me a small box. The team had pooled money for a gift. Inside was a fountain pen, not dark green, not expensive. A simple black instrument with a brushed silver clip. My name was engraved along the side. Elena Park, founder. I held it for several seconds without speaking. The room waited. Trevor's Pelican had once represented everything wrong with my old life. I had bought it to celebrate a man whose career I had created. He clicked it while taking credit for my work. Then dropped it when consequences arrived. This pen meant something different. Nobody gave it to me because I had rescued them from their own negligence. Nobody expected repayment. It recognized what I had built without asking me to make myself smaller. "Thank you," I said. That was all I managed. The team applauded anyway. Later that evening, after everyone left, I remained in the conference room alone. The city lights reflected against the windows. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote one sentence on the first page. Never confuse being needed with being valued. For most of my life, I had believed usefulness was the price of belonging. My family praised me when I solved problems. My employer praised me when I saved money. Trevor praised me when I repaired his reports. But the moment I asked for recognition, fairness, or boundaries, their praise disappeared. That was not love. It was access. They did not fear losing me. They feared losing what I provided. The distinction changed everything. Being needed can feel powerful. People call constantly. They say nobody else understands. They insist the situation will collapse without you. For someone raised to earn affection through service, that urgency can feel like proof of importance. But genuine value does not require permanent emergency. People who value you learn your work. They respect your limits. They prepare for your absence. They do not build their comfort on your exhaustion and then accuse you of cruelty when you finally rest. I had spent years calling my overfunctioning loyalty. It was not loyalty. It was fear. Fear that saying no would make me selfish. Fear that refusing another rescue would prove I was ungrateful. Fear that my family would stop loving me if I became inconvenient. Eventually, I learned the most painful truth. Their version of love already depended on my obedience. Losing it did not leave me empty. It made room for relationships that did not require my surrender. Maya became more than my attorney. We met for dinner once a month and rarely discussed lawsuits. Gabriel remained demanding, but he was direct. When Summit Care needed additional features, it paid for them. When Kestrel rejected an unrealistic deadline, he negotiated instead of threatening. My employees challenged me. Sometimes they disagreed publicly. That did not feel like betrayal. It felt like trust. Healthy relationships did not always feel warm or easy, but they allowed both people to remain whole. That was new to me. So was failure. Kestrel's first international pilot went badly. A customs data integration produced false delay warnings across 17 shipments. No medication was damaged, but the client lost confidence and suspended the rollout. My old instincts returned immediately. I stayed at the office until 2 a.m. I rewrote sections that belonged to other teams. I prepared to accept the entire blame because control felt safer than uncertainty. The next morning, our cybersecurity architect, Lena Ortiz, closed my laptop in the middle of the conference room. "You hired us to solve this with you," she said. "Not to watch you destroy yourself proving you can do it alone." A year earlier, I might have taken offense. Instead, I went home. The team corrected the problem without me standing over them. The client resumed the pilot 6 weeks later. Kestrel became stronger because I stopped treating delegation like danger. Freedom, I discovered, was not only the ability to walk away from people who exploited me, it was also the ability to stop carrying everything after they were gone. That lesson took longer. There were still days when guilt arrived without warning. A holiday invitation from a colleague would remind me that Diane once planned every family celebration around Paige. A baby crying in a restaurant would make me wonder about my niece. A silver-haired man crossing a parking lot would briefly resemble Gordon from behind. I did not become emotionless. I became honest. I could miss people and still recognize that contact was unsafe. I could hope Paige eventually built a stable life without volunteering to finance it. I could wish my parents peace without giving them access to mine. Forgiveness did not require reunion. Compassion did not require proximity, and boundaries did not become wrong merely because someone suffered after crossing them. That final idea mattered most. My family called their consequences cruelty because they had never expected to experience them. They were comfortable when I absorbed every cost. The moment I stepped aside, the weight returned to the people who created it. They called that abandonment. It was accountability. I did not destroy Trevor's career. I stopped constructing it. I did not ruin Paige's dream home. I refused to fund the lie supporting it. I did not take my parents' security. They pledged it to a man they chose not to question. I did not collapse Ardent Vale. I removed private property from an organization that refused to respect its owner. Once as I understood that, their accusations lost their power. I no longer needed to prove I was a good daughter. I needed to live as an honest woman. Those were not the same thing. Near sunset, I closed the notebook and placed the new pen beside it. Below me, thousands of cars moved through Denver. Each driver was carrying a private life, a deadline, a hope, a burden nobody else could see. For decades, I had assumed strength meant carrying more than everyone around me. Now I knew better. Sometimes strength was setting the burden down. Sometimes it was locking the door. Sometimes it was allowing the people who handed you the weight to feel how heavy it had always been. I wish I could say setting that burden down was simple. It was not. People often describe boundaries as though they are clean lines drawn once and respected forever. That was not my experience. A boundary had to survive guilt, loneliness, anger. The sudden memory of a good day with someone who had also caused harm. It had to survive holidays, birthdays, illnesses, and the voice inside me, asking whether one more sacrifice might finally earn the love I had wanted since childhood. The answer was always the same. Love that required my destruction was not love I could afford. My family did not lose access to me because they made one bad decision. They lost access because every opportunity for repair became another attempt at control. They never asked what Trevor had done to me. They asked what I could do for Trevor. They never apologized for taking my work. They asked how much of my settlement I would return. They never wondered whether I felt safe. They wondered why my safety prevented them from entering my office. That pattern mattered more than blood. For years, I excused patterns by isolating each event, one unfair request, one stolen report, one cruel family dinner, one promotion I was told to surrender. Viewed separately, each incident seemed survivable. Together, they formed the architecture of my life. I was expected to produce, to repair, to remain quiet, to accept less, and to feel grateful for the privilege. The moment I saw the whole structure, I could no longer pretend one conversation would fix it. Some relationships do not need better communication. They need distance. That truth frightens people, because distance removes the fantasy that everyone can be saved through patience. Sometimes patience only teaches another person how long you will tolerate being mistreated. Sometimes forgiveness becomes permission. Sometimes loyalty becomes a cage with a family photograph hanging on the wall. I stopped measuring goodness by how much pain I could absorb. That was the real victory. Not Trevor's conviction, not Malcolm's disgrace, not Ardent Vale's collapse, not even the settlement. Money gave Kestrel room to grow. Justice restored my name. But peace came from something no court could order. I believed myself. When my family called me selfish, I no longer assumed they were right. When they called me cold, I examined the facts instead of surrendering to the label. When they said I owed them, I finally asked what they had demanded from me in return. Their words lost power when I stopped treating accusation as evidence. That is what I would tell anyone trapped in a similar life. Look at the pattern, not the apology after the pattern, not the promise made when you begin walking away, not the sudden affection that appears when your resources are no longer available. Look at what repeatedly happens. Who carries the cost? Who receives the credit? Whose needs are always urgent? Whose pain is treated as negotiable? Who is allowed to say no? The answers will tell you more than any speech about loyalty. You do not have to wait for a dramatic betrayal before protecting yourself. You do not need a courtroom, a secret account, or 612 pages of evidence. Persistent disrespect is evidence. Repeated exploitation is evidence. The exhaustion you feel after every interaction is evidence. Your life does not need to become a disaster before you are permitted to change it. Walking away is not always punishment. Sometimes it is simply refusing to remain available for harm. I still stood by the windows most mornings. Denver woke slowly beneath the mountain light. Inside Kestrel, the first employees arrived with coffee and laptop bags. Screens illuminated. Shipment routes appeared. Problems waited to be solved by people who knew they would receive credit for solving them. My black fountain pen rested beside the notebook on my desk. The first page still held the sentence I had written after our annual meeting. Never confuse being needed with being valued. I read it whenever old instincts returned. Then I looked at the company around me. I had not become successful because my family betrayed me. I became successful because I finally stopped allowing betrayal to define the limits of my future. They had told me I was alone. They were wrong. I had myself. That was the relationship I should have protected from the beginning. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been expected to sacrifice your career, your money, or your peace to protect someone who would never do the same for you? Have you ever been called selfish simply because you finally said no? Share your experience in the comments. Someone reading may need to know they are not the only person learning how to walk away. And remember this: you are not responsible for maintaining a system that survives only by draining you. You are not cruel for refusing to finance another person's choices. You are not disloyal for protecting the future you work to build. Your time belongs to you. Your talent belongs to you. Your peace belongs to you. Anyone who truly loves you will not require you to destroy all three just to prove it. If this story meant something to you, like the video and subscribe for more stories about betrayal, accountability, and rebuilding a life on your own terms. Because sometimes the moment everyone says you have lost everything is the exact moment your real life begins.